Welcome to my first Pokemon Cards 101 Masterclass. My name is Oliver and I've been collecting Pokemon cards my whole life. A couple years ago, I decided to dedicate the majority of my time to building an educational platform for Pokemon card collectors. You may notice that the audio quality and video format change throughout this class. This is essentially a supercut of all of my educational videos edited together. Now, I have gone through and cut out anything that isn't relevant today, so all of the information is up to date. I'm also going to jump in after each video and summarize key points. But you might have to suffer through some of my early videos where I wasn't as comfortable on camera. I've added chapters with timestamps, so feel free to skip around, ask questions in the comments, or even watch at 1.5 times speed if that's better for you. Okay, let's get started. The very first video we're going to watch was created for beginners and acts as a sort of bird's eye view of the Pokemon card hobby. If you're returning to the hobby after a hiatus, it can be confusing. Let me break it all down for you, starting with booster packs. So this is a booster pack today. I've got a 1999 pack here for comparison. They look similar, but the cards inside are a lot different. The cards are a lot shinier now, and unlike the original packs, each booster will contain a guaranteed holo and 2 reverse holo cards, and any of these can be swapped out for a higher rarity. Oh, and by the way, the rarity scale is quite a bit different. In an old pack, the hit was a rare, represented by a star, and if you were lucky, you could pull a holo rare. Today, rare is actually on the lower end of the rarity scale. Yeah, there's a whole scale of rarities now. It can be confusing, but all you need to remember is black, silver, gold, and 1 star, 2 star, 3 star. I have a whole in-depth guide on the rarity system, so feel free to watch it later. But the key takeaway is that special illustration rares marked with 2 gold stars are the most valuable on the secondary market. They have detailed artwork and texture on the face. These are the cards that everyone chases after. A common question I get is which booster pack is the best to open, and the answer lies in expansion sets. There are a lot of expansion sets. A new one is released about every 3 months, so over the past 25 years, that's a lot of sets. It'll make more sense if we look at the structure. We have different blocks of the TCG that span more than a year. This is sometimes called an era. For example, we're in the Scarlet and Violet era right now, but this will change soon because most of these eras coincide with the release of the video games. And they also come with a unique game mechanic. You might remember Pokemon EX from the EX era in 2003, and they've actually returned a few times over the years, but we've also had GX, V, and more. The booster pack we just opened says Scarlet and Violet, but it also has a set name, 151 in this case. New sets contain new cards, mostly. Sometimes they reprint cards for the TCG or just to cash in on nostalgia, like Charizard here for example. Each set includes a few chase cards, and these are the sought after ones that stand above the rest, usually going for a couple $100 on the secondary market. The biggest chase card though of the modern era is this, Umbreon VMAX. Each set has a set symbol, so you could quickly identify which set a card was from based on the symbol, but they recently removed these and now use an abbreviated version of the set name, so there's a lot less confusion. There are a lot of resources and apps you can use to see which cards belong to which set. Some websites I like are PokemonCards.com and the official database, Pokemon.com. Regarding apps, I like Dex and Pokelector. Now, I'm not affiliated or sponsored with any of these, they're just what I like to use. And if you're returning to the hobby, you might feel the urge to collect every card from a set. We call this a master set. Just a warning, this is harder to do today than it was in the early 2000s. Sets are bigger and cards are harder to pull. Plus, we have all kinds of variants and promos which are optional and would lead you into something I call a Grandmaster set. Now, I do have a whole video dedicated to master sets, so you can learn more there. If you want to master set one of the original sets, like base set for example, buying singles is best. The booster packs are just too expensive now. But you should also consider 151. This is a modern set that includes only the original 151 Kanto Pokemon. It's kind of like a new updated base set. And by the way, if you do decide to start a master set, collecting all the cards just by opening boosters is just no longer feasible. You'll spend 2 to 3 times more. Open as many boosters as you want, but then buy the cards you're missing and you'll save yourself tons of money, I promise. Next, you're probably going to be collecting promo cards. Now, this isn't something that has actually changed all that much. Remember Black Star promos, like the ones you got from the movie theater? They still do these, although the sets are much bigger. They don't belong to one of the regular expansion sets. They actually have their own set that spans the entire era of the TCG. For example, the Scarlet and Violet Black Star promos started when Scarlet and Violet came out, like the video games, which is when the Scarlet and Violet set came out. And it will end when the Scarlet and Violet era ends, when the new games come out. It's one big set that's drip fed over a year or two. Now, some promos can be hard to find and become quite expensive. This gray hat Pikachu was available to customers who visited the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam. Unfortunately, this turned into a pretty large fiasco involving scalpers and corrupt employees and produced headlines across the world. And yes, people actually bought plane tickets to Amsterdam just to get one of these cards. This was a whole thing, and the Pokemon Company issued several statements about it, eventually pulling the card from the museum and offering it through the Pokemon Center, the official store, which we will talk about later, and even some GameStop locations. So this dropped the price as supply increased. But 99% of promos are going to be found in bundles with products that you can find on the store shelves, so you don't really have to worry about that. Collection boxes, ETBs, and blister packs will have promos, but there are dozens and dozens of products now. This video would be way too long if I went through every single TCG product and explained each one in depth. But luckily, I've already done that, so once again, I'll link the video here and also down below the like button. But the tricky thing about promo cards is that they're only available for a short amount of time, and some of them, like the Pikachu with gray felt hat, can be tricky to obtain. In this case, you'll have to visit the secondary market. Now, back in the day, the secondary market was basically bringing your binder onto the school bus and trading cards, but today it's much less wholesome. So the secondary market ranges from $1 listings all the way up to the 6 and 7 figure deals that we see on social media. These high level deals are typically done privately or at auction, but for normies like us, we go to eBay and TCG Player. We'll get into this more when we talk about buying and selling cards, but first we have to discuss how we got here. So collecting Pokemon cards was a pretty small hobby for a pretty long time. After the initial launch of Pokemon died out, the franchise existed on a small but healthy scale. But then in 2016, Pokemon Go launched, and this caused a lot of people to come back. Pokemon cards flew off the shelves, and the demand reached an all-time high. However, this was nothing compared to COVID, to the pandemic. This was a kind of perfect storm. People were in lockdown, isolated in their homes. This means that digging through your attic or basement and rediscovering your old 1999 Pokemon binder was actually really common. Lots of people were doing this. And in addition to this, everyone had extra money from government checks and also skipping their annual vacations and no longer going out to eat with friends. Everything exploded. Collectibles in general absolutely skyrocketed. Cards were hitting market prices that had never even been dreamed of. Because it all comes down to supply and demand, especially at the time when the supply chain was barely moving. People were literally fighting over booster packs at Walmart. Thankfully, we've somewhat recovered from that embarrassing moment, but things do get a little sketchy from time to time. Be prepared. And we haven't even touched on grading yet. Basically, you can send your cards to a company and they will authenticate it and give it a grade based on its condition. They encase it in a plastic slab and ship it back to you. Sounds silly, and it is, but it's extremely woven into the collectibles culture. Grading increases the value of your card, especially if it gets a 10. The price gap between a 9 and a 10 is huge because most collectors want 10s, which leads us to investors. You probably already know about this and this. These are vintage Pokemon cards that now cost the same as a house. However, back in 1999, you could pull a first edition Charizard for a $3 pack if you got lucky. If not, you could buy one from a friend for 15 bucks. People want to get in on the great returns. However, the golden age has passed. Great returns can still be had, but it's unlikely to ever hit that level ever again. Remember, Pokemon cards are collectibles, so they actually gain value, and this creates an opportunity for people to make money. Once an expansion set is out of print, it starts to get more expensive. People will buy sealed product and hold on to it until they make a great return. Now, to be clear, I'm not judging anyone here. I'm just letting you know what's up in today's collectibles culture. And if you find this intimidating, you don't have to worry about it. You can just collect cards. But there are opportunities for collectors. For example, if you pull an expensive card but don't really care for it, you can grade it, sell it, make a small profit, allowing you to upgrade to the card you actually desire. But if you want to get a card graded, you're going to have to take care of it. For example, this first edition Charizard you had when you were a kid. If you kept it in mint condition, it could sell for a lot of money. But if it's in poor condition, it's worth a lot less. Now, if you're collecting cards, you're going to need sleeves. These are little pockets made of plastic that you put your card into. We have different sizes. The two most common are standard and slim, sometimes called perfect fit or inner sleeves. Either is fine. It's just a preference thing, but you can also use both and double sleeve your cards. After this, you have a few options. Top loaders are common. These are also called rigid or hard sleeves, and they're basically just a bigger, thicker version of a sleeve, but no longer flexible. There are also card savers, sometimes called semi-rigid sleeves. These are flexible, but they hold your card in a way that will prevent it from shifting. These are especially used during shipping. Now, you can find binders that fit top loaders and even card savers if that's your style. Otherwise, regular binders fit sleeved cards. Now, it's sinful to use any of this without first using a sleeve, by the way. If you buy just one thing, buy sleeves. And everyone has different standards when it comes to sleeving cards. Despite my channel name, I don't actually sleeve every card. I usually sleeve anything hollow and leave non-hollow cards naked. But that's a personal choice, and you can do whatever the heck you want. Now, back in the day, we used 3-ring binders with clear pages, but these are out. The general consensus around these 3-ring binders is that they can harm your cards. I've experienced this myself. In addition to this, top-loaded pages means cards can fall out of the binder if held upside down. Today, we have an improved design. These binders offer much more for card protection. The pockets are side-loaded. Most have zippers, and the soft interior prevents the pages from getting dull. These are just so much more better than the old playground binders that would collect dust and dirt, potentially hurting the value of your cards. Let's move on to how to value a card. Alright, so maybe you dug up your old collection or you have some new cards you want to know the value of. Let's jump onto eBay really quick. eBay isn't the only marketplace to buy and sell Pokemon cards, but it's the biggest. First, I'm going to search for the card name. That is the Pokemon's name followed by its card number at the bottom. In this case, Pikachu, and the number is 60 of 64. Then we're going to enter the condition of the card based on this scale. And I'll drop a link below the like button if you want to look into this condition guide a little more. In this case, I'm going to search LP, which means lightly played, based on some of the whitening on the edges of this card. Here are the search results. So we can see that we searched the right card. There's one more thing to do though. I'm going to only filter to sold listings. This way we can see what people are actually paying for the card, not just their asking price. Now you can buy or sell cards on eBay, just make sure that the seller has good feedback and make sure you look at the images closely and you'll most likely have a good experience. And yes, sometimes you'll find fake cards, but eBay has an authenticity guarantee and I've always gotten my money back. A quick tip here that has saved me money: combine shipping when possible. And if you don't see an option for it in your cart, just message the seller. Sometimes shipping makes the card no longer worth it, but reaching out to the seller works. They almost always are willing to work with you. Another huge marketplace is TCG Player, which is actually owned by eBay. And TCG Player is a great resource too if you want to look at card values over time. You get these neat little graphs and average prices you can watch and pay attention to. If you want to make Pokemon card shopping more of an experience, check out local card shows. There is one near you. Here you can walk around and browse an insane collection of cards. You're probably going to see stuff you didn't know existed or things you otherwise would never see in person. And you'll get the chance to meet new people. My friend Coop does this and uploads his whole day to YouTube, so you can get a candid and honest look into the world of card vendors. He also gives cards to kids for free, which is hard not to love. If you want to buy new cards like fresh booster packs, then the official website, PokemonCenter.com, is going to be the best place to start. However, they are sold out often. Anything after this is going to be at your own risk, but most of the time, GameStop, Target, places like that are going to be safe. Avoid AliExpress, Etsy, and Temu. Guys, if Pokemon cards are extremely cheap, they're fake, okay? Fake cards often come from fake booster packs. A quick way to tell if a booster pack is fake are these triangle cuts on the top and bottom. Now, not all fake packs have the triangle cuts, but it's a good place to start. Fake cards often have typos and poor print quality and just feel bad. Remember how some new cards have texture on them? Fake cards often mess this up or they just skip the texture altogether. A good first step in identifying a fake card is to just Google search the card. Compare the images to your card and look for obvious mistakes. So the key takeaways of this video are: everything is different. Expansion sets can get confusing, but I have a whole video on that we will watch shortly. The secondary market drives all the prices and a lot of people take advantage of that. And buy sleeves. If you don't have sleeves, buy some. And if you're ready, pick up top loaders and a binder as well. Now, I skimmed over a lot of concepts in that video, and we will be taking a deeper look at them later in this course, such as master sets, card value, and grading. The next video covers all the different kinds of Pokemon card products you'll find in stores, and what's included in each of them. Okay, it's kind of confusing, especially if you're returning to the hobby after a long hiatus. Here is a crash course on all Pokemon TCG products and how they work. Back in the day, we had decks and booster packs to supplement your decks, and that's pretty much it. But today we have new products coming out almost weekly. First, we have the booster pack, which hasn't changed much. The cards inside have, though. Booster pack composition changes every now and then, but the basic principle is still there. Mostly non-holo, relatively common cards, and a chance at a very cool rare card, sometimes maybe even two very cool rare cards. And they each come with a single code card. These are for the Pokemon TCG mobile app. If you scan the QR code, you redeem a booster pack in the game. Another product you'll see on the shelves is the Elite Trainer Box, but most of us just call it an ETB for short. Now each set is going to have its own ETB, and it will only contain cards from that set. These are popular because they offer a decent price per booster pack, as well as a handful of other goodies. You get 10 booster packs, a bunch of supplies, a promo card, and the box itself, which comes in handy. ETBs are a popular choice for sealed collectors due to their visual appeal. And I would actually argue that this is the best product to buy if you're a beginner. Maybe you're a collector or a TCG player. Maybe you don't know yet. This product offers a little bit of both. And you can find special Pokemon Center exclusive ETBs on the official website. Right now, they come with an extra booster pack, so a total of 11, and a second promo card with a Pokemon Center stamp on it. There's also UPCs, which we'll visit in the next section. And recently, they started making these booster bundles. This is a box of 6 booster packs and nothing else. These are good if you don't want all that extra stuff. And the packaging can double as a cheap deck box too if you're in a pinch. Mini tins contain 2 booster packs, Pokeball tins contain 3 booster packs, and the regular tins come with 5 boosters plus a promo card. Sometimes you'll find tins exclusive to a set, so they only contain cards from that set, but they usually have assorted packs inside from previous sets. Next, we have collection boxes. These come in any size or shape. Many of them have a unique theme. For example, we've seen Charizard boxes or Evolution boxes, and they all come with promo cards, but some come with other stuff like figures, posters, binders, or pins. Now, you might be curious about booster boxes. These are not sold at retail stores. You can't find it at Target, you can't find it at Walmart. Back in the day, these were meant exclusively for game shops to purchase and then sell the boosters individually. But now, anyone can just order them online, and this is the lowest price per booster pack you will find. These are a popular choice for Pokemon card investors since they quickly gain value once the set is out of print. Theme decks are decks with a theme. After all, there is a game to be played with these cards. These are pre-assembled decks that should be pretty easy to understand and use. The Pokemon and trainer cards have nice synergy, and there will be enough energy cards to support different strategies. And similarly, build and battle boxes are focused on building a deck. However, these do not contain decks. They just offer the necessary cards from the new set to start building strategies and play around with the new release. These also contain 4 booster packs, unless you get the Build and Battle Stadium version, which does supply you with everything you need to play a game, for 2 people actually. These are a great choice for anyone who's wanting to learn the TCG. So those are the main products that you're going to find for pretty much every expansion, but there's some more that come at different times of the year. This all started with the video games, and to this day, the video games still lead the franchise. Previously, we were in the Sword and Shield era, but once Scarlet and Violet released for the Nintendo Switch, the TCG moved into the Scarlet and Violet era, or block of the TCG. So all of the products being released right now will say Scarlet and Violet on them, and in a year or two, they'll say something else. We usually get a new expansion every 2 to 3 months, so we get 5 or 6 per year. Most of them will be mainline expansions, but we typically get one special set around the holiday season, and I'll come back to this. With the release of these mainline expansions every 2 to 3 months, they'll be accompanied by ETBs, tins, decks, blister packs, and everything else I already mentioned. The holiday season is when we get more interesting products. We get collection boxes that cash in on nostalgia, actual holiday products like the Trick or Trade bundles and holiday calendars, and an ultra premium product. Now, we only saw the introduction of ultra premium collections, or UPCs for short, a few years ago. These are big, expensive boxes with very collectible cards, and these are marketed more to the adult collectors such as myself. UPCs are like high-end ETBs. They usually contain a handful of booster packs, a playmat, sleeves, high-quality TCG supplies like metal dice, desirable promos, and sometimes metal cards. By the way, there are only a few metal cards, and they all came from UPCs. These ones are fake. The holiday season usually brings some other products too, like the Pokemon TCG Classic or this premium Charizard product. Now, I said I would come back to the special set. So these mainline expansion sets have a tight schedule and we know what to expect from them. They're like the bread and butter of the TCG. They reveal new card types, rarities, game mechanics, but special sets, sometimes called holiday sets, are a whole different pocket monster. Pokemon 151. You're probably aware of this set because, it's only the most successful set ever. This set features only Generation 1 Pokemon from Kanto. It's pretty typical for a special set to capitalize on 90s nostalgia. Many of us are in our 30s now with disposable income, so they take advantage of that. There are three main things to note about special sets. First, they kind of break the rules. You'll notice that you can't buy a booster box of the Pokemon 151 set in English. They pretty much force you into buying these collection boxes with the exception of the booster bundle I mentioned earlier. Second, the set itself will be geared towards collectors. We're talking huge chase cards, limited promo cards that will be hard to find, and big sets that cost a pretty penny to complete. Lastly, the special sets usually get reprints. These products sell. They literally sell out like crazy, even a year after release. Mainline expansions might hang around for a few months, but special sets will be available for a year or more, with Costco rolling in new pallets on a weekly basis. One of the biggest, most powerful tools the Pokemon franchise has is promotional cards. So this might be a little bit of an oversimplification, but any cards that you find outside of an expansion set are going to be promo cards. Promo cards can be expensive or cheap, really cool with unique exclusive artwork, or pretty underwhelming. They can be anything and can be found anywhere. But most of the time you'll find them on the shelves, imprisoned behind a plastic barrier. This topic goes pretty deep, so I'll probably make a promo cards explained video in the future, but for now, let's just break them down into two categories: Black Star promos and other promos. So to keep track of promo cards, they actually have their own set. These are called the Black Star promos, and it's a set that expands across the entire era or block of the TCG. So for example, Scarlet and Violet Black Star promos started with these little guys, numbered 1, 2, and 3. And the final promo will be before the next video game releases and starts the cycle over again. But there are promo cards that don't belong to the Black Star promo set. These are also found in products, and again, I'll use Pokemon 151 as an example. The Alakazam EX collection box came with 3 promos: Alakazam, which is a Black Star promo, but also Abra and Kadabra, which are not Black Star promos. These are cards from the main set, but now they have a different holo pattern. These kinds of promo cards have been a thing for a very long time. They're kind of hard to keep track of because they don't have a home like Black Star promos do. And in the same category, I would put stamped cards, like this GameStop Charmander. This is identical to the mainline Charmander in every way, but it has a GameStop stamp on it, and it's not a Black Star promo. The McDonald's Pokemon cards are kind of weird. They are a set, like they actually have their own numbering system and booster packs, but to me, they feel more like promo cards because, well, it's really more of a promotional campaign. Premium tournament collections tend to pop up every once in a while. They feature a trainer character instead of a Pokemon, and come with a nice promo card featuring that trainer. 7 assorted booster packs and game supplies. And it all gets packed into this cute little milk carton inspired box. Lunch boxes, officially called collector's chests, are a seasonal product that is marketed to the younger consumer and contains 5 booster packs, plus some stickers, a coin, a notebook, and a mini binder. The Trainer's Toolkit is specifically for those who are into the TCG. Much like the pre-built decks or build and battle kits, they offer much more value to someone who's going to be playing the game in person. These toolkits come with only 4 booster packs, but a ton of TCG stuff like energy cards, sleeves, and a deck builder's guide. Oh, and an official TCG rulebook. Okay, if that was overwhelming, you're not alone. It was overwhelming to make, believe me. ETBs, or Elite Trainer Boxes, are going to be the best product for beginners since it offers a little bit of everything. But if that product isn't right for you, there should be something else. If you want just packs, try a booster box or a booster bundle. But ETBs are by far the most popular. In fact, the next video is a deep dive on the ETB and why it's positioned as the best Pokemon product, but it's also sort of a sequel to the last video, going further into product design and how different products fit into different marketing tactics. The Pokemon Company uses various methods of marketing psychology on us, and I think it's important to know how we're being manipulated into buying Pokemon cards. This is an Elite Trainer Box, but everyone just says ETB for short. If you're returning to the hobby, you might be wondering what is so special about the ETB. Everyone's talking about them, but they don't really seem to be that good. So what's the deal? Well, it has a special promo card, which can sometimes be very desirable. These days, the promo is almost always a beautiful illustration rare, and if you purchase a Pokemon Center exclusive ETB from the official website, it comes with an extra promo, but this one has an exclusive stamp. And these often sell on the secondary market for more than the ETB itself. They also come with dice, counters, and energy cards. These are for the TCG, and while they're nice to have, many of us don't actually use them. Oh, and these dividers, which are really nice, but they never really give you enough. The sleeves can sometimes be cool or even desirable if they have a cool design or popular Pokemon on them. Each ETB is going to have a mascot Pokemon who's going to be on the front of the box, the booklet, and sometimes the sleeves. And people don't talk about this often enough, but it also comes with a booklet that shows us all the cards in the set. Furthermore, it has a key so you know which cards come as reverse holos and regular holos. It's incredibly useful even to a veteran collector like myself. And of course, we have booster packs. ETBs will always come with booster packs exclusive to that set. Back in the Sword and Shield era, ETBs came with 8 booster packs, but if it's a Scarlet and Violet product, it'll have 9. And you may have noticed that the Pokemon Center ETBs are a little bit more expensive. Well, they each come with 2 extra booster packs. So a Sword and Shield ETB is going to have a total of 10, and then a Scarlet and Violet ETB is going to have a total of 11. But only the Scarlet and Violet ones come with that extra promo card with the exclusive stamp on it. And the contents of an ETB can sometimes change a little bit, like for example the Pokemon Go ETB had a deck box in it, but we've covered the basics. But that's just regular TCG junk, and if you really want the sleeves or like the box or something, you can always buy it on eBay for pretty cheap. So why is everyone so obsessed with ETBs? Well, it's the value proposition. Think of it like this: every product on the shelf is an offer. The Pokemon Company is making you an offer in exchange for your hard-earned money. Now, we're going to come back to this, but I want you to think about the ETB and what it offers you. In other words, why would you buy an ETB? I ran a quick poll on my channel, and 2/3 of you have purchased an ETB in the past. And if you Google this question, why do people buy ETBs? You'll find multiple Reddit threads asking this very question. And the overwhelming answer is because they're the only thing available. It's the only thing that people can find. And this will be different based on where you are in the world, but a lot of Pokemon TCG products sell out and they're hard to find, even online. Like booster bundles or collection boxes, but for some reason the ETB is always there and usually at a pretty good price. Anecdotally, I can confirm this. My local GameStop's usually pretty good at staying stocked up, but if I go to my local Walmart, it's almost always empty with a few ETBs scattered on the shelves. Now, one reason for this is that they make a lot of them. If you're a returning customer to your local retailer, you might notice that ETBs tend to stay stocked up longer than the other products. For example, Shining Fates came out in 2021, but in 2023, it was still being restocked at Walmart, even though the rest of the Shining Fates products were long gone and out of print. But if ETBs are as amazing as everyone says, why aren't they the first to sell out? Well, the answer is in the rest of the product line. A booster bundle offers 6 packs and nothing else, no fluff. The value proposition here is cheap booster packs and that's it. The trainer toolkit is full of TCG supplies and nothing else. This product offers the consumer a quick and easy way to play the TCG and try out new card combinations and strategies. Collection boxes are exciting and usually come with multiple promo cards. In addition to this, they offer eye appeal, and this is a big deal for sealed collectors. If you collect cards, and if you're watching this, I'm gonna assume you do, you fall into one of these 3 categories: card collector, TCG player, sealed collector. And you don't have to belong to just one tribe like some sort of sports team. You can belong to 2 or maybe even all 3 of these categories. So each of these categories has its own offer, a product made specifically for each of them. Card collectors, like people who want to build master sets and maybe send some in for grading, they'll probably buy booster bundles. People who want to play the TCG, maybe even competitively, are gonna grab the trainer toolkits, or maybe the build and battle box because it has the best value for them. There's a value proposition there. And sealed collectors or investors of Pokemon cards are going to buy whatever has the best return, which is booster boxes, collection boxes, and anything with promos printed in a low supply. This is sometimes called targeted marketing or market segmentation. And there are some of us who do actually belong in all 3 categories. In this case, you might want cards, TCG supplies, and something that can offer you a return on your purchase, just in case you don't pull anything good. In this case, the ETB might actually be your first choice. In marketing, this is called a bundling bias. So if you do want a little bit of each, instead of buying the trainer toolkit and a collection box and maybe booster packs, you can just buy the ETB. It's easier and it's cheaper because it's bundled together. And I touch on this a little bit in a previous video. And I would actually argue that this is the best product to buy if you're a beginner. Maybe you're a collector or a TCG player. Maybe you don't know yet. This product offers a little bit of both. All right, let's jump back to the question I asked you earlier. Why would you buy an ETB? Because it's the only thing on the shelf? Okay, maybe. But actually, it's because the value proposition of an ETB aligns with all 3 of those categories. And the ETB is specifically designed to do this. It's an insurance product. The Pokemon Company needs something that is good enough for everyone. It has a pretty decent value proposition for each of us, no matter which category you're in. And so when you get to the store and everything else is sold out and there's just some ETBs, you say, all right, at least it has something that I want. And the box is nice too. This is called situational marketing. And this is where you realize that all roads lead back to the ETB. So the ETB is designed to prevent the consumer from leaving the store empty-handed. But the Pokemon Company takes this even further. Every year we get a few different expansion sets, one of which is a special set. This is usually some hyped up, nostalgia-heavy banger. And to be fair, it's usually pretty good, like Pokemon 151. For these special sets, they do not offer booster boxes or individual booster packs. This narrows the product selection and the value proposition of an ETB becomes even sweeter. Suddenly, the price makes more sense for collectors and the demand goes up for investors. And if you're a TCG player, special sets don't offer TCG-focused products. This is why ETBs are almost always on the shelf, but the Pokemon 151 ETBs are not. So it's important to note that I am a big fan of ETBs and I highly recommend them. That video basically outlined why they seem to be the one product that fits all consumers. Now, depending on when you're watching this, Pokemon cards might be hard to find. We go through occasional hype cycles in Pokemon where products are sold out everywhere. However, this will pass and things will go back to normal like they always do. In many of these videos, you see me make references to the Pokemon card products you find in Walmart or Target, which might not be a thing right now. But when I made some of these videos, it was as simple as just walking into the store and buying as many cards as you want. Next, we're going to deep dive into collecting culture and how one should approach Pokemon card collecting. It is overwhelming, and having some sort of direction or goal when you start is critical. So this lesson involves an introspective look, maybe some self-reflection on why you collect and how you should collect in the future. It was originally written as a budgeting video, although it didn't end up like that. This hobby can get crazy expensive, so this should help you navigate all the choices. Some of the world's top collectors each have very specific goals, but they also have qualities that drive them to completing these goals and eventually owning some of the most impressive Pokemon card collections in history. And no, they aren't all rich. In fact, many are regular people like you and I. So what does it take to be the very best like no one ever was? Why are you collecting Pokemon cards? It's not a rhetorical question, I'm actually asking you. I built this flowchart that we will go through step by step as a self-audit, so we can identify which goal suits your collecting style best. This started out as a how to collect Pokemon cards on a budget video, but during my research I found that budget, big or small, isn't what's holding us back. It's the collector and the pressure put on us. Here's the first decision we have to make. What motivates your collecting? On the left, we have an honest, true love for the cards. When I was a little kid, I loved Pokemon Yellow on my Game Boy. I still have the exact Game Boy and cartridge right here. Sugimori's watercolor illustrations to this day are so inspirational to me, and I only got to open booster packs on special occasions, so it made Pokemon cards very special to me. At this point, I just want the most fun for my money, and if you feel this way too, you might take this path. But you'll be faced with more serious ethical questions, like, are you comfortable with gambling? When you open a booster pack, you are engaging in a gambling mechanic. This behavior is addictive and in rare instances, dangerous if you keep spending to chase a single card, eventually outweighing the original cost of the card you're chasing. Back in the day, the odds of pulling a Charizard was about 1 in 108 packs, but some modern chase cards are estimated to be 1 in 2,000 packs. If you're comfortable and you know the risks, then you'll end up opening booster packs to get most of your cards. Following the chart, we see that this leads us to the most expensive way to collect. And this might be a good time to mention that this is just a chart that I made and I'm just a YouTuber. You might feel like you're a combination of multiple paths, and that's okay. In fact, it's realistic. The important part comes later when we talk about goals. But for now, if you're not comfortable with the gambling aspect, then you'll want to focus on trading and buying singles. Trading is the best because it's essentially free, so try to make trades when you can. But buying singles is widely accepted as the smartest way to collect from a financial standpoint. Today, there are a lot of great cards for just $1 to $2. Every time you open a booster pack and get nothing interesting, you lose the value you paid. It's even worse if you already have all those cards. Opening some packs and then switching to a single strategy is popular. It's the best of both worlds, but it requires strong willpower. Buying singles also offers flexibility. You can buy any card at a few different price points. A card graded at a 10 will be the most expensive, obviously, but you can go for a near mint raw copy, a lightly played one, or even a damaged one if you really value that discount. Okay, let's jump back to the beginning and try the other path. What motivates your collecting? On the right, we have a value-based collecting strategy. This is if you want to build the most impressive net worth out of Pokemon cards. There is something captivating about holding a binder that's worth 5 figures. So if this sounds like you, there are 3 paths to take: sealed, speculating, and flipping. Now, I won't go into too much detail, but these are different ways that you can make money by collecting Pokemon cards. Keeping sealed product that gains value over time, or buying raw cards, grading them and flipping them into the profit is super common ways to build value. I represent these as separate paths here, but in reality, you'll be doing all of these three things. The idea behind this type of strategy is that you can use your profits to buy the cards you want, making them, in a way, free. All of these investing paths lead to the clock symbol, which represents time. What financial worth you can assign this is up to you, not me. This could be the most expensive way to collect, or the cheapest, depending on how you feel about it. So if you're on a tight budget, you can try flipping a card to pay for a different card. But you need to consider your time as well. It might make more sense to pick up an extra shift at work or find a second job. Okay, so maybe you notice that every path eventually leads to one path, and that's because any combination of collecting habits or strategies can eventually arrive at any goal. The flowchart was to provoke thought and reflection on how you buy your cards. I ran a poll on my channel and almost 2,000 of you voted on one of these four goals. One came out on top by a huge margin. Can you guess which one? If you have a fascination with a specific illustrator, a specific Pokemon, or collecting all of something, then this might be the goal for you. Over 50% chose this as their collecting goal. Some of the most fascinating sets in the world started with personal goals, like David Person, who's collecting every single card ever, or Jesse Pang, who's collecting the Gold Star cards in pristine CGC 10s. Or Mr. Amadeus, who says, right now I'm focusing on collecting first edition trainer cards. Not all of them, because I don't like them all, but the ones I like. The hand-drawn art from those early trainer cards has a special quality to me. With a goal like this, I can tell Mr. Amadeus grew up, like me, absolutely fascinated with vintage Japanese art style. A popular one I see is one card of every Pokemon, so completing the Pokédex. Since there are over 1,000 Pokemon, that means this goal would include collecting over 1,000 cards. But there are sorts of rules you can set for yourself. For example, maybe you only want holo cards, or maybe each card has to be the most expensive card for that specific Pokemon. A collector with this goal probably isn't opening booster packs very often, because that would just be a poor use of their budget. Or maybe your goal is to have fun with your kids and family, or just build a deck and play the TCG, which is totally respectable. Like CLR977, who says, I just want to play with my sons. We treat Pokemon like a board game and nothing more. Goal number 2 is master set collecting. The reason this isn't in personal collections is because a master set is a predetermined list of cards, and you're probably going to be collecting cards that you don't really have a passion for as a natural part of the process. You might choose one specific set to complete, or you might start with your childhood collection and fill in the spaces that you're missing. If you're crazy enough, you might start with the 1999 base set and try to master set every single set up to the most recent release. For one to achieve this, they would have to exercise a lot of discipline and use strategies like trading and buying singles. They wouldn't have time to flip cards on eBay. A friend of mine, Max City, set out to collect the entire set of 1996 Card-Ass Prisms, all in a PSA 10. He didn't randomly acquire these. He specifically sought out each one, and the hard work paid off. He now has something incredible. The third goal is one that I personally find very tempting. The goal is to have one specific Grail card. This would be something like a first edition Charizard or Pikachu Illustrator, maybe a prototype card or the test print Blastoise with the Magic the Gathering back. Many of these are in the 6-figure range and therefore are out of reach for most collectors, including myself. But there are mid-tier Grail cards like the Gold Stars or some rare promo cards. Now, please forgive me, but I'm going to use Logan Paul as an example here. He set his eyes on Grail cards, Pikachu Illustrator, and first edition Charizard. I know what you're thinking, he's rich, so he can buy whatever he wants. And while that is true, the fact is he set goals and he met them. But most of us don't have millions in disposable income, so what do? By automatically saying the words, I can't afford it, your brain stops working. By asking the question, how can I afford it? Your brain is put to work. This is a quote from Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert T. Kiyosaki. What it means is that when you say that you can't afford something, like let's say a PSA 10 first edition Charizard, you stop thinking about it. You lose focus and you move on to other things, probably booster packs. But when you say, how can I afford that Charizard? The gears start turning. And if you keep that thought at the forefront of your mind, it can eventually happen. If your Grail card is out of your price range, that's kind of a good thing. If you could just go and buy it, then it wouldn't be a Grail card, would it? As your collection grows and becomes more valuable, you could perhaps sell it all or trade the entire collection for that one Grail card 20 years from now. And from here, you have leverage. You could trade this Grail for a different Grail when you get bored of it or something. If this is your goal, you can't afford to lose focus. Forget about the new Pikachu or evolutions. If this is your goal, you can't afford to lose focus. This last goal is a bit of a wild card. Money. Now, collecting Pokemon cards to make money isn't frowned upon. This is frowned upon. Don't confuse the two. Some Pokemon cards are world-class collectibles, and that means that there's money in this hobby. Some people collected first edition Charizards and sealed booster packs back in 1999, and now they have the opportunity to take care of their families for generations. If you have a little one and you want to build a collection with them or for them over the next 18 years with the intention to sell it off and pay for college, then that's a perfectly reasonable goal too. Look at the price of a Team Up booster box from 2019. That's only 6 years. If you bought a dozen of these, paying college tuition isn't a joke anymore. It's realistic. It might happen. And if your goal is actually the Grail card, then this could be a step toward that too. But that takes an incredible amount of discipline, experience, and luck, not to mention a high cost up front. Maybe you really align with one of these goals. A lot of people in the poll did, but others went down to the comment section because they felt like one goal didn't represent them accurately. Hispanic Panic says, so far I want to collect every Crown Zenith card and as many of the Gardevoir line as I can. So they mostly align with the Master Set goal for Crown Zenith, but have a personal side goal of collecting Gardevoir cards. Ninja Stroll says, basically collect whatever I can with no end goal in sight. And I'm sorry to pick on you, Ninja, but this is actually the exact problem we're trying to solve here. Building a world-class collection actually means setting a goal and holding yourself accountable. The Pokemon Company profits off of FOMO and impulse buys, so they're going to push that. No one is buying every promo, every set, and every chase card that comes out, so don't feel pressured. So the biggest takeaway for that video is to set a goal. Lots of people choose one Pokemon and collect every card of that Pokemon, and I think that's a great default if you don't have any other ideas yet. I like Bulbasaur, for example. Buying whatever you can find will end up draining your bank account, and it might feel like gambling. Your goal might be to complete a Master Set or Grandmaster Set, which is our next lesson. This is my 1999 base set Master Set. If we check the very first card here, we can see that Alakazam is number 1 of 102. Now, if we flip a few pages, and this is where Jungle starts, so let's ignore that, we can see that the last card in base set, the Water Energy, is 102 of 102. I've completed this set and collected all 102 cards, so we call this a Master Set. Now let's jump ahead 24 years. This is my Pokemon 151 Master Set. Well, it's not a Master Set yet. I'm still working on it. But now we have reverse holos, secret rares, and even a card made of solid metal. The TCG has evolved, but so has the terminology. Welcome to Master Sets 101. Base set is an easy example because there's no fluff, just the original 102 cards. But a year later, Team Rocket was released. This set introduced the first ever secret rare, Dark Raichu. Check out its number at the bottom, 83 of 82. And Dark Raichu isn't just the first secret rare, it was also the very first time a card was released in English before Japanese. In fact, this card was made by Wizards of the Coast in America, and it's rumored to have delayed the set's release by 3 months. So in case you don't know, a secret rare is any card where its number surpasses the set number, just like Dark Raichu here. It's no question that Dark Raichu needs to be caught in order to complete the Team Rocket Master Set. Today, all sets have secret rares, and lots of them. Stellar Crown, released in September 2024, has 33 secret rares, but some sets, like Paldean Fates, released in January 2024, have as many as 154 secret rares, which make up the majority of the set. You have to collect all the secret rares to complete a master set. There's no argument here, so let's add that to our cheat sheet. And next up, let's discuss reverse holos. Reverse holos were first introduced with the Legendary Collection in May 2002. Interestingly, this was an English exclusive set made up of reprints from base set, Jungle, Fossil, and Team Rocket. This was done to make cards more available and playable for the TCG, but 20-something years later has turned into one of the most collectible sets of all time. So every card in this set has a reverse holo counterpart, doubling the total of the set. But the number doesn't change. For example, Alakazam is 1 of 110, and the reverse holo Alakazam is also 1 of 110. This brings the total of the set to 220. Modern sets all include reverse holo cards, but not for every single card like the Legendary Collection. If you have one of the booklets found in an ETB product, they will provide you with a key so you can see which cards in the set have reverse holos. But basically everything common, uncommon, and rare is going to have a reverse holo variant. And as you can see, I've included reverse holos in my Pokemon 151 Master Set. And yes, these are a requirement for the Master Set, so let's add that to our sheet too. Next, we're diving into promo cards. Most promo cards belong to their own set, like the Black Star promos. This started all the way back, actually at the beginning of the TCG. Maybe you remember receiving a promo card when you went to see the Pokemon movie in theaters. This Dragonite doesn't belong to the base set or Jungle or Team Rocket though, it's actually number 5 of the Black Star promo set. And the Black Star promo set itself can be a master set. But when it comes to the modern TCG, this hasn't changed. Scarlet and Violet has its own Black Star promo set, although these sets are massive and some cards might be impossible to get. But this is where the line starts to blur a little bit. Let's look at this Pokemon 151 product. It comes with all sorts of goodies like booster packs, a playmat, dice, a coin, and some promo cards. Mew and Mewtwo here are actually Black Star promos, which means they belong to the Black Star promo set, not Pokemon 151. And if this feels weird to you, you're not alone. It's weird. I think most collectors would consider these promos to be part of the Pokemon 151 expansion, but they're not. However, I think most of us would include them in our Pokemon 151 Master Set. Personally, I like to keep them at the end, after the secret rares. Like I said, this is where things start to get blurry. And this is a good time to mention that Master Set isn't an official term. It's a word that collectors made up to describe a complete set. So you might have a different idea of what Master Set means. And if you disagree with me, go ahead and comment it below so we can start a discussion to help out the newcomers to the hobby. So for now, I'm going to put the Black Star promos in the not required column, but we will revisit this before the video is over, I promise. We have to stay on track, and next up we have unnumbered promos. If Black Star promos made things blurry, unnumbered promos make things messy. This is truly where most of the confusion comes from, but I'm gonna try and break this down in a simple way. Let's jump back to the Team Rocket set of April 2000. We have our 82 cards, plus Dark Raichu, the secret rare, for a total of 83 cards. But this number gets bumped up to 86 if you want to include the unnumbered promos, Dark Gyarados, Dark Arbok, and Dark Charmeleon. Dark Gyarados can be found with a pre-release stamp on it, and Dark Arbok can be found with a gold W stamp. These were both available through the Pokemon League, but at different times. And the third, Dark Charmeleon, which also has the gold W stamp, was only available through an exclusive Kraft Foods giveaway that was only in Australia. And to be clear, these cards are already in the Team Rocket expansion set, but without any special stamps. But they are otherwise identical. And this practice of just stamping regular cards and releasing them as promos spans the entire history of the TCG, way back in the Wizards of the Coast days, all the way to today in the modern sets. If we flip to the back of my Pokemon 151 binder, we'll see this little guy. This Charmander looks just like the one from the main set, but he has a GameStop stamp. This is essentially the same as the pre-release Dark Gyarados to the Team Rocket set. Sorry for stating the obvious, but yes, this Charmander was only available through GameStop. There is a Squirtle and a Bulbasaur with stamps that I don't have yet. They came from the Pokemon Center and Best Buy, respectively. Oh, and another one is the EB Games Charmander too. And it doesn't stop there. Pokemon 151 is kind of notorious for unnumbered promos. Snorlax has a Pokemon Center stamped variant which was only available through Pokemon Center exclusive ETBs. Pikachu and Eevee have Pokemon Together stamps. Voltorb has a Professor Program stamp, and there's a Cosmos Holo variant of that variant. Dodrio has a Play Pokemon stamp, and then a bunch of the cards have Cosmos Holo or Reverse Cosmo Holo variants. And now to make things even more complicated, some cards have slightly different Cosmos Holo patterns. And if you want to know more about this, I made a video on it. And if that was overwhelming, I don't blame you. It is overwhelming. Like that Voltorb, for example, is so rare that it's much more expensive than most of us are prepared to pay. So to complete a master set, are these unnumbered promos required? Well, lately I've heard the term Grand Master Set thrown around. And I think that's what we're looking for here. It sounds kind of crazy to add another tier, but with dozens of additional cards, there's a need for a higher level, something to describe a master set that includes everything, so we can clear up all of this confusion. And if I'm not mistaken, the title of Grand Master originates from chess. A chess Grand Master is the highest possible title aside from World Champion, and it's extremely prestigious and difficult to obtain. So let's revisit that cheat sheet. For a master set, the total number of cards plus secret rares are required. All reverse holos are also required. Basically anything that can be obtained through a booster pack is going to be mandatory to complete a master set. Black Star promos such as the Mew and Mewtwo I mentioned earlier are not technically required because they belong to their own set. But if you're not collecting the Black Star promo set, then I would encourage you to include them with your master set like I have. Anything beyond this is going to fall into the Grand Master set. To complete a Grand Master set, everything is required. Remember, this is the highest tier, the most complete a set can be. This includes everything from the master set, plus unnumbered promos, all stamps, all holo variants, all holo patterns, metal cards, box toppers, jumbos, everything. Like, there are literally no more cards to collect, no question that you are done. And one of the most difficult Grandmaster sets to complete is actually probably base set. While this is one of the easiest master sets to complete, the Grandmaster set is close to impossible. You would need to collect all 4 print runs plus variants that were only included in promotional products like the Trainer Decks A and B. A Grandmaster set of Japanese base set would even be more difficult, I guess, because you'd have to collect the no rarity cards, which are extremely rare. I can't stress just how difficult to complete a Grandmaster set is. So I made this point in the video, but I want to reiterate that the term master set means many things. If you were to go look at the comments on that video, everyone is dropping their own definition of master set and what mastering a set means to them. Lots of people skip reverse holos, for example. They don't like them, and that's fine. It's important to build a collection that is unique to you and your tastes. Otherwise, we would all just have the same cards. The next video is a lesson on expansion sets. So this should help put master sets into better context. We take a look at all the expansion sets released since 1999 and go over patterns that have surfaced over the years. I talk about the difference between regular sets and special sets and more. The thing about Pokemon card sets is that they don't really explain anything. For example, which sets are special sets? How long will they be printing the set for? And what does all this junk at the bottom of the card actually mean? What is a set? Okay, so each series is made up of smaller sets. So the first set of Scarlet and Violet is called Scarlet and Violet. We call this Scarlet and Violet base. But after that, they get super cool anime names like Paradox Rift or Evolving Skies. And each of these sets add additional cards, either to collect or play the game. And even though everyone just calls them sets, they are officially called expansion sets because, well, they expand the game. Each set gets its own set of products like booster packs, collection boxes, ETBs, booster bundles, and more. However, some products will contain booster packs from multiple sets. Pokemon started back in Japan in 1996 when the video games were released, and to this day, they guide the general direction of the entire franchise. Each time a set of mainline games are released, a new generation of Pokemon is revealed. Shortly after this, the trading card game follows. Previously, we were in the Sword and Shield era, but now we are in the Scarlet and Violet era. The pattern is simple and pretty easy to follow, but if we go way back to the early 2000s, these sets weren't called Red and Blue, Gold and Silver. Everything from base set to Skyridge is referred to as the original series and follows alongside the Game Boy games. From Red and Blue all the way up to Crystal version. After the original series came the EX series, which ran parallel to Ruby and Sapphire for the Game Boy Advance. After this, Diamond and Pearl came out in 2007, and this is when the TCG adopted the pattern of using the game title. Although there is still some nuance, for example, Heart Gold and Soul Silver gets its own series, but other remakes like Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, they just get a special set. One thing I get asked a lot is why individual booster packs aren't for sale for a particular set. Well, that's because they belong to a special set. You could argue that the first special set was Southern Islands back in 2001, but Dragon Vault from 2012 is officially recognized as the very first special set. Back then, special sets were small. Dragon Vault only had 21 cards if you count the one secret rare, and Double Crisis from 2015 had 34 cards. And they dropped the series logo. Dragon Vault was just Dragon Vault, not black and white Dragon Vault. Today, special sets are much larger, often exceeding 200 cards, and starting with Scarlet and Violet, they now include the series logo. Special sets used to be rare, but now they're released semi-regularly. Following trends from Sun and Moon and Sword and Shield, we can expect at least 5 special sets in the Scarlet and Violet series. And some people like to use the set number to reference each expansion. So the first set of Scarlet and Violet series, Scarlet and Violet base, is number 1. Paldean Fates is 2, and so on. But special sets are in between, so Pokemon 151 is actually number 3.5, and Prismatic Evolutions is 8.5. And I love special sets, but they are mostly a marketing tactic. If we look at the special sets we've gotten over the past few years, they're mostly designed to draw in the Gen 1 fans who grew up playing the original games. They also pack them full of amazing cards with pull rates that are just enough to encourage gambling. And part of that strategy is to withhold individual booster pack sales. Let's look at 151. This set's product lineup was all boxes and bundles, with the best value being the booster bundles, as long as you could get them at MSRP. You can't buy a single booster pack, you have to buy multiple. This is just their way of making you spend more money. Another point of confusion is reprints. Unfortunately, the Pokemon Company doesn't disclose the number of cards that are printed for each set, and it's fairly inconsistent. That way, there's a sense of scarcity and FOMO, and consumers are more likely to purchase products just in case they aren't restocked the following week. These days, it feels like I'm always hearing about Pokemon 151 getting a reprint. This means that the Pokemon Company might have more 151 products made, so your local Walmart, Target, or GameStop would get more 151 products in. But no one really knows until distributors start allocating products to vendors. What I mean is that some random Reddit comment isn't as credible as the GameStop manager, who might actually know something. By the way, when a set is reprinted, the cards are the same. There's no difference between the first wave and the latter one. There are a lot of questions surrounding reprints, and unfortunately, we don't have a lot of answers, but I always go back to the Pokemon Company being a business that wants to make money. Secondary market prices don't benefit them directly, sales do. A set like Pokemon 151 or Surging Sparks is in high demand, so they are heavily incentivized to print more cards. But why do we see some cards skyrocket in price only to come down the following weeks? This Pikachu, for example, shot up in price as soon as it was released. People couldn't find Surging Sparks boosters because it was all sold out, and since it's a special illustration rare, we knew it was probably hard to pull. A lot of people choose to just buy the chase card instead of gambling for it. This, along with other factors, contributes to cards being super expensive at the launch of a new set. And at this point, you might hear rumors about the set being short printed or out of print. And that's misinformation or a fear-mongering tactic to manipulate the price of the card. New sets will be continually printed at least until the following set is released, so don't drop $2,000 on that Pikachu just yet. But enough about that, we need to discuss set composition. If you feel like there's a new set coming out every other week, you're not alone. It's overwhelming, and when you have a busy life, it's hard to keep track of what the heck is going on in Pokemon. Basically, you can expect a new mainline expansion every 2 to 3 months. Now, this isn't set in stone. They like to mix stuff up every once in a while, but you can expect 5 to 6 sets per year. It feels like more though, because we get a lot of news about release dates, Japanese set releases, leaks, and stuff like that all the time. Now, I don't touch on the Japanese side of collecting often, but it's essential to understand how the international sets are made. Pokemon cards usually release in Japan first, and then a couple of months later, they're released internationally. But it's not as simple as just a translation. Japan and North America are two different markets with different consumer habits. Japanese expansion sets are smaller and released twice as often. For example, between May and November, we got Twilight Masquerade, Shrouded Fable, Stellar Crown, and Surging Sparks. Within the same time frame, in Japan, they got 2 Battle Master decks, Night Wanderer, Stellar Miracle, 2 Stellar Terra-type starter sets, Paradise Dragona, and Super Electric Breaker, which all released new cards. A lot of these Japanese releases are going to be combined for the international market. These Stellar type Terra sets and Paradise Dragona and Super Electric Breaker are combined to make Surging Sparks. This is why we often know which cards are going to be released. We get a sneak peek into the future by observing the Japanese sets. Another difference you'll notice between Japanese and international cards is the set identification system found in the lower left-hand corner of the card. Japanese cards have a rather confusing numbering system, but the international cards have an abbreviation of the set name. For example, here's SSP, which stands for Surging Sparks. The EN refers to English. If we check a Spanish card, it has ES for Espanol. Now, not all of this applies retroactively. If we go back to the Sword and Shield series, we can see that they had set symbols. This system wasn't great because many symbols looked similar and it was a lot harder to memorize intricate shapes. The Japanese cards never did this, but their system was only a little less confusing. Some sets have subsets. This is a set within a set, like the Galarian Gallery or Trainer Gallery. If you open a booster pack of Crown Zenith, you can pull cards from Crown Zenith, obviously, but also from the Crown Zenith Galarian Gallery, which has its own number system. And the trading card game can also influence which cards are in which sets. Any TCG will naturally have cards that are better than others and make it into the mainstream meta. Because of this, new cards have to be developed to counter those cards that are doing too well, and sometimes cards can be developed to support other cards that are getting neglected. Now, I'm not super educated on this, but the channel PTCG Radio is, if you want to get into the nitty-gritty details and really nerd out. And some cards even get reprinted so they're more available for TCG players, making it so they don't have to fight the secondary market just to play with a deck that they like. Okay, so far we've only touched on mainline expansions, but we get lots of smaller mini sets from time to time. Some examples here would be the Halloween Trick or Trade sets and the McDonald's collection sets, which don't have any expensive chase cards since they're primarily meant for kids. And the Play Pokemon sets, which can be completed by attending in-person events. If you take a closer look, these sets are actually reprints from the mainline expansions, but with new holo patterns and sometimes stamps, attracting die-hard collectors who might be searching for a special variant. For example, this Pidgey is a reprint from the Pokémon 151 special set, but with an exclusive stamp on it. You might want to collect this single card to add to your Pokémon 151 binder, but not the whole Play Pokemon set. But it wasn't always this way. If we go back to the WotC era, there were plenty of unique mini sets that contained new cards. Southern Islands is a great example. This was a set of 18 new cards with incredible artwork and holo patterns released in Japan and then in English 2 years later. This was a really cool promotional set, but actually had its own symbol and number system, so these wouldn't be categorized as Black Star promos, which is its own set. The first Black Star promo was Pikachu in 1999, and after this they added an additional 52, with the final being Suicune in 2003. These 53 cards became the first Black Star promo set. This tradition has been carried on to the present day, so there is little confusion. Each series comes with its own Black Star promo set that is drip-fed throughout the term. Some are small, like the 53 card Wizard set, but some are large, like the Sword and Shield Black Star promos, which is a whopping 307 cards. Japanese cards have a similar system, but the Black Star is replaced with a little box that just says promo, just like the mainline expansions. But there was a time in the past when they did borrow the Black Star symbol for a bit. Now I want to get into the more nitty-gritty parts of the hobby, and we're going to start with grading 101. This video covers card grading. Again, from a bird's eye view, and after watching you should be able to identify different grading companies, understand raw versus graded values, and how the secondary market impacts grading. We'll talk about how to grade a card in a minute, but first we need to discuss why people grade cards, and it's not as simple as you may think. The biggest reason is probably resale value. Tens are where the money is made, and there is a lot of money to be made. Some people have built huge businesses by purchasing raw collections, grading them, and selling the tens. But there is risk involved. Unfortunately, having a card graded really means you're paying for an opinion. There's a long-running joke that your grader might have had a bad day, and as a result, your card got a lower grade than it deserved. Even though this is a joke, there's some truth in here. And we know this because there are thousands of examples online of people cracking slabs open and resubmitting their cards until it gets a 10, because 10s sell for a lot more than 9s. Now, resubmitting isn't free. You're essentially submitting another card, therefore paying the fee again. Because of this, companies that utilize machine learning or AI to grade a card are on the rise. The theory behind this is that you should be able to resubmit a card and receive the exact same grade every time. But most cards are still being graded by humans, which means it's a bit of a gamble. Another perk is that grading companies will authenticate your card, so once it's in a slab, you know it's not fake. Most of the time. Unfortunately, the more money, the more corruption and scheming tend to leak into the hobby. Now, I don't want to discourage anyone from buying their first graded card, but there are fake slabs out there. Some labels will have a QR code on the back that you can scan, and it will take you to the high-resolution scan of that card. This way you can compare the holo pattern or unique characteristics to confirm that no funny business is going on. And while you're on there, you can check out the population report. You see, each service has a pop report that displays how many cards have been graded and at which grades. For example, that Umbreon card that everyone loves has been graded by PSA over 20,000 times, and most of them got 10s. We can learn a lot from analyzing a pop report. For example, The first edition Snorlax from Jungle has been graded over 4,000 times, but only 47 have received a 10. So it's probably pretty expensive to buy a 10. By the way, this would also suggest that it's a good opportunity to make some money, if you happen to have a raw gem mint copy at home. My advice, even though I said this would be unbiased, is to just enjoy it for yourself. Grade the card that you want to grade, and if you see an opportunity to make some money, take it. Grading cards and selling them or trading them to obtain a card you want more is very reasonable and acceptable. Let's start at the beginning. The first thing you have to do is choose a grading service. They all offer different slabs, labels, pricing, and perks. However, the industry is heavily dominated by PSA. They grade the most cards and tend to sell for the highest on the secondary market. The downside is that they are a little more expensive, and they'll charge you extra if you have something special like a first edition Charizard, for example. A couple more are CGC and BGS, also known as Beckett. Both companies grade on a scale of 1 to 10, just like PSA, but offer a grade higher than 10. These are pristine 10s, or perfect 10s, meaning that these cards are perfect in every way. We'll talk more about these in the pre-grading section. In this industry, people tend to choose one grading service and declare their loyalty to them. But it's important to remain unbiased and send your cards to whichever service is best for you. A grader's reputation is a very important factor. People trust PSA, and that's why they have such a high value on the secondary market. There are a lot of young grading companies that are only a few years old, and while they might be very good at what they do, they don't have decades of trust from the public. As a result, a 10 from these smaller companies isn't worth the same as a 10 from PSA. But that might not matter to you. A specialized label might be the perfect fit for your personal collection, and that's okay. It's all about what makes you happy. This factor also comes into play if you live outside the US. Domestic options are a lot cheaper, but resale value will suffer because Americans won't recognize the grading company. And before we move on, someone may have told you not to trust one service or another because they make mistakes. To be clear, this happens across the board. People have tested these companies by sending them fakes. For example, someone sent PSA authentic cards with fake first edition stamps, and they actually graded them. CGC recently graded fake playtest cards, and in the past graded cards as miscuts even though they were cut up at home with scissors. Beckett has been accused of favoritism a lot. This includes one person's submission receiving 81 black labels, which should be near impossible even from a statistical standpoint. None of them are perfect. Remember, this is a service they provide. They work for us. So if you're looking to maximize resale value, PSA is a grading service for you. Otherwise, it's worth researching each service and deciding which one vibes the best with you. And remember, some popular influencers are heavily invested in one company, so it's in their best interest to recommend them. And sometimes slander others. Okay, choosing a card or multiple cards can be tough. There's a lot to think about, and it can get expensive the more cards you pick. But I'll tell you a secret. It's not that big of a deal. I want you to focus on getting your first submission out so you'll be more comfortable with future grading decisions. Okay, so you're flipping through your binder and trying to find some cards to send off. A few questions I ask myself are, is this better in my binder or on display? And is this something I could potentially sell if it gets a 10? It's tempting to only send cards in that look like potential 10s. Let's jump back to that Umbreon pop report. All these 10 grades doesn't mean that all Umbreons are 10. It means most people send it in if it looks like a 10. This is because Umbreon is in high demand and a 10 sells for big bucks. You might want to look up the raw value of your card, then compare it to the graded value. All we're doing here is a little bit of research to see which cards have the highest return on investment. In some rare cases, grading can lower the value of the card. This sounds crazy, I know, but it's true. A raw card that looks like a 10 can be more expensive than a graded 9. I recently sent in this Walking Wake EX card. It looked like it could be a 10, but it got a 9, and unfortunately, it didn't really add any value, so I kind of wasted the grading fee. This is why it's important to do your research beforehand. But what if you just want to send in your childhood cards, regardless of value? This is not only okay, it's encouraged. No one is going to frown upon the idea of grading a playground Charizard. In fact, some people collect cards that get a grade of 1. There's something special about a card that has visible signs of being loved. These 1 grades can sometimes outperform 2s or 3s on the market. But if you don't care about value and you don't typically display your cards, then it might be time to ask yourself if grading is even worth it. You're spending money and taking on a small amount of risk by shipping your card in the mail. It might be better to just admire grading cards from a safe distance. I mean, thanks for watching the video, but if you aren't interested in grading, then don't let others pressure you into it. And if you pulled a huge card with your kids or your partner or something, and you're wondering if you should grade it, hell yeah! Grade that puppy and preserve that memory. I think that's an awesome idea. Listen, last year I got my original Japanese starters graded. Now they didn't all get 10s, which kind of sucks, but I wanted to display them all next to each other. And I submitted them all at once, so they have sequential serial numbers. And I think that's really cool. You might not think that's really cool, and that's fine, because they're my cards. This whole hobby is about collecting the things you like. But when you do find a card you like, you might want to pre-grade it before sending it in. Pre-grading is simply the process of grading the card yourself before sending it away. This can help you determine whether or not the cards might score a grade of 10. This is a very common practice and a skill you can develop over time. We're going to look at 4 categories: centering, surface, edges, and corners. Centering is the first thing I like to look at. We're going to observe the symmetry of the card and check if the image is centered on the actual cardstock. There are tools you can get that help, like this one, and there are apps you can use that will calculate it for you. But with some experience, you can eyeball it pretty well. We're going to compare the top to the bottom and the left to the right. If one side is thick, the other side must be thin. Sometimes looking at the corners can help. To get CGC's pristine 10 label or Beckett's black label, the centering has to be a perfect 50-50. This means that it's perfectly centered. Otherwise, you can usually qualify for a regular 10 on centering with a 45-55 split. Oh, and by the way, depending on which service you choose, you'll want to check that company's grading guidelines while you pre-grade. They are a little bit different. For example, PSA is cool with a 45-55 centering on the front, but they'll actually allow for 75-25 on the reverse and still give you a grade of 10. Next, we want to look at the edges. Sometimes edges will look nice, but other times they'll look rough or frayed. Unfortunately, this is the result of the manufacturing process, so you'll sometimes see this if the card is pack fresh. This should lead you to the corners. They should have a nice round shape with no whitening. The cardstock is white, but of course it's covered by the ink. If some of the white shows through on the edges or corners, this is called whitening. This is most commonly found on played cards, but unfortunately, it can be a byproduct of the manufacturing process as well. So again, some brand new cards can have minor whitening. Finally, we want to look at the surface of the card, front and back. Holofoil cards are highly susceptible to scratches. Some cards have texture, and this is graded as well. Sometimes it can be defective from the factory, unfortunately, so you want to inspect closely and make sure all those little ridges and valleys are consistent. And when we're inspecting the surface, you might find it useful to use a magnifying glass and utilize different lighting. This will sometimes reveal small dents or creases. Unfortunately, this kind of damage will knock the grade down considerably with most grading companies. I have a Blastoise that appears to be gem mint, but actually has a very small indentation, knocking its grade down severely. Most grading services are going to grade each of these 4 categories on a scale of 1 to 10, and then use those individual values to generate the overall grade. Some even put the subgrades on their labels, like Beckett. If they give all 4 subgrades a 10, then you qualify for their black label, one of the most desirable grades in the industry. And keep it in mind that not all cards grade the same. A non-holo doesn't scratch easily, so it'll probably get a good surface grade. But some other cards have foil or glossy surfaces, which can easily be damaged. And each grading company has a scale on its website, so you can make an educated guess at your card's potential grade. Okay, now find the raw price and the graded price of your card and compare the two. Don't forget to subtract the grading fee. This will give you a good estimate of your costs and potential profit. Listen, this is going to feel intimidating at first, but you'll get very good very quickly with some practice. Pre-grading isn't a necessary step if you're just doing this for fun, but if you're shooting for a 10, then I would recommend it. Placing your order and packing up your submission is the most intimidating step. Pretty much all services offer different tiers or packages. The faster you want your cards graded, the more expensive it's going to be, but you can get a discount by sending in more cards. Once you've chosen the tier that works best for you, it's time to pack up your cards. Some grading services are strict with how you package your cards. If you package them in a way that makes it hard to unpack, it could be a liability for the company. They don't want to damage your cards if they're forced to use scissors or peel sticky tape, for example. If you screw up, they might charge you extra or even send your cards back. Although I've never actually had this happen yet. Each company is going to have different packing rules, so make sure you read their guides online. Alternatively, there are lots of YouTube submission guides for each service, but if you do this, you are putting your trust in that YouTuber, so just be careful out there. Be aware of that. Once your cards arrive at the grading facility, you should be able to follow through the grading process online. In most cases, you won't be charged until your cards are graded and ready to be shipped back to you. By the way, you usually have to declare a value, and this is for shipping insurance. Since grading a card usually increases its value, the insurance needs to cover the potential loss of your graded card, not the raw card. If you still find this overwhelming, using a middleman service is an option too. Recently, GameStop has become a retail middleman service. This is nice because all you have to do is drop off your cards and you can basically piggyback off of GameStop's discount. The downside to using GameStop or another middleman service is that you're putting your trust in someone else, and that's a decision you have to make for yourself. But even after all this, you might be holding a card and wondering to yourself, is this worth grading? Having your card graded is kind of silly. You're paying someone to have an opinion, then encase it in plastic, and then all of a sudden you can sell it for a lot of money. But it's also pretty cool to send your card away and have it come back feeling like a little trophy you can put on display. If you want to try it out, I'd say go for it. Alright, so grading can get toxic. Well, no, let me elaborate. The grading community can get toxic. Once cards get graded, more money is involved and things tend to heat up. If you're a beginner, I would suggest grading with any company just to get the feel for it. Don't send anything too valuable just yet. I think it's important to break the ice with your first submission, and then you're going to suddenly understand a lot more and you'll be able to make educated, experienced decisions. The next lesson is going to be pretty intense. I'm going to run 2 videos back to back that explain rarity symbols, which is historically complicated and confusing in this hobby. The first video covers current rarity symbols that were introduced with the Scarlet and Violet series. They switched things up. Then the second video jumps back to 1999 and we carefully go over each symbol introduced over the past 30 years. Some people seem to love these videos and frequently thank me for making it so easy, so I hope that works for you. A common Pokemon card has a small, filled-in black circle, like this. As the name suggests, it is the most common rarity, and each booster pack will net you a handful of them. Common cards were introduced in 1996 when the TCG itself was first released. You'll notice that commons are made up of basic Pokemon that have not yet evolved, although there are exceptions to this. Commons are usually non-holo, but can be found as a reverse holo. Another self-explanatory rarity, uncommon, is slightly less common than common. It is represented by a small black diamond shape. You'll usually get a couple of these per booster pack. Once again, this rarity has been around as long as the cards themselves. You'll notice that uncommon can be a basic or evolved Pokemon, and that most trainer cards are uncommon. Rarity is not just for collectors. When you're building a deck for the trading card game, you typically want between 2 and 4 copies of each card. So Rarity is also designed with card accessibility in mind. Okay, this is where things get interesting. The rare Rarity uses a black star, like this. And to be careful not to confuse this with the black star promo symbol, which we will circle back to later. Booster packs have a guaranteed rare, which means you'll always get one in a booster pack, unless it's replaced by a higher rarity. A rare can be hollow or reverse hollow. They used to be available as non-hollows, but this changed in 2023 with the Scarlet and Violet expansion. If it is a reverse hollow, it will be in the reverse hollow slot, not the rare slot of a booster pack. By the way, the Japanese version of the trading card game do not use the same symbols. Instead, they have English letters to denote the rarity. C is for common, U is for uncommon, and R is for rare. Next up, we have double rare, which uses 2 black stars as its rarity symbol. The Japanese TCG uses 2 Rs. These can replace the rare card in a booster pack, and as the name suggests, are of a higher rarity than rare. If you've pulled any EX Pokemon lately, you'll notice that they are double rares. Double rares and every rarity moving forward will be a hollow. Now, some EX cards actually do have texture on them, but this doesn't change the rarity symbol in any way. It's still just a double rare. It should be no surprise that the pink star is specifically for the pink cards. Okay, officially it's magenta, not pink, but you won't see it anywhere other than the Ace Spec cards, which are actually pretty hard to come across. The Japanese TCG uses the bold magenta letters ACE as a rarity symbol. You'll also notice that these cards are textured and have a very specific hollow pattern. The Gold Star rarity is called an illustration rare, but the Japanese side of the TCG calls it an art rare and uses the letters AR as a rarity symbol. You'll instantly notice that these cards look different. The illustration goes right from the top of the card all the way down to the bottom. These are pretty versions of cards that are already in the set. For example, you might notice that Pokemon 151 has 3 Charizard EX, or that Temporal Forces has 4 Walking Wake EX. All of the cards' text is identical. They have the same HP, the same moves, but a different rarity and card number. This is done so the trading card game players can easily get cards for their deck, and then collectors, such as myself, can have fun chasing after the rare versions. All of the rarities moving forward on this list are going to have less rare, more attainable copies. Another thing you'll notice with the illustration rare is that the card's number will have surpassed the set's total number. This means that the card is also a secret rare. Now, it's important to note that secret rare isn't a rarity in itself, and it does not have its own rarity symbol. Instead, the secret rares are made up of multiple rarities. An illustration rare is just one of them. So anything surpassing the set number is considered a secret rare. Ultra rare looks a lot like double rare, but uses silver stars instead of black. For the Japanese version, it will be SR, which stands for super rare. In a booster pack, you can sometimes find it in the rare slot. So these are also secret rares and usually come after the illustration rares regarding the set's numbering system. Ultra rares have their own look to them. The artwork again goes top to bottom, covering the entirety of the card, but the illustration isn't as detailed as an illustration rare, for example. Ultra rares and anything moving forward is going to have texture. I can really try hard to get good shots of this, but nothing is as good as seeing this in person. These cards have a thick kind of varnish over top, and a detailed texture is pressed into it. And each illustration has its own fingerprint. The texture will sometimes flow with the artwork and add depth, or highlight certain design choices. After this, we move into special illustration rares, which is symbolized with 2 gold stars, or SAR, for special art rare on Japanese cards. These are my personal favorites, and many of you will probably agree. These are like illustration rares, but with the texture. There aren't very many of these per set, and they're pretty hard to pull. Both illustration rares and special illustration rares will occupy the reverse holo slot in a booster pack. 3 gold stars means hyper rare. The Japanese version calls this ultra rare, denoted by a UR, which is different than our ultra rare. Now, these are the highest rarity currently available in a booster pack. As you can see, they are covered in gold glitter, and on top of that, textured. These gold cards will end off the set number. There is nothing after them. These can be found in the reverse holo slot of a booster pack, just like the illustration rare and special illustration rare. Some sets will include a hyper rare energy card. This is the only time you will see an energy card with a rarity and a set number at the bottom. But we're not done. Next up, we have shiny Pokemon. These are Pokemon that have had their color palette swapped, but identifying them is easy because they have their own rarity. The Japanese rarity symbol is an S, but ours is a gold star again, but this one isn't filled in, it's just an outline. If you're worried that you're going to mix up the gold stars, don't. A shiny rare will always look like this, and it even has some texture on it. But you might get shiny ultra rares mixed up, and I'll admit this one is a little bit complicated. The Japanese version will have SSR, which stands for shiny super rare, but the international cards, our cards, will have 2 gold stars, but again, they're not filled in, just outlined. These look a lot like ultra rares, unfortunately, but that is what they are. They're shiny versions of ultra rare Pokemon. The Pokemon's color will be different, and you can look for the gold stars that look just like the rarity symbol in the artwork. And of course, the number will be different, which reminds me, shiny rarities will always be secret rares. Not all sets include shiny rarities. The most recent is Paldean Fates, which was a special set released in early 2024. We should also mention Black Star promos. Now, I don't think this is officially a rarity, but let me explain it anyway. At the bottom, where you would usually see a rarity symbol, will be a black star with the word promo. Japanese cards will just have a black rectangle that says promo. And this is an abbreviated way of saying promotional. It'll also have a card number, but no total set number. However, these are numbered one after the other and won't tie in with the mainline expansion sets. Promo cards can come from anywhere, from seeing a movie at the cinema to being included in a special product. Maybe the GameStop employee will give you one. You really don't know when or where you're gonna find one. They're designed to be included with something, whether that an event, a product, or a purchase online. But there's one place where you will never, ever find a Black Star promo, and that's a booster pack. You know common, uncommon, and rare already. If you're an OG, you might remember this triple star rarity. If you're a person of more sophisticated taste, you might know about this rarity. No rarity, which is ironically extremely rare. Learning all the new rarity symbols today can sort of feel like learning a new language. But don't worry, my job is to make it easy. WOTC stands for Wizards of the Coast, but everyone just says WotC. They were in charge of the international Pokemon cards from 1999 to 2003. During this time, we only had a few different rarities. The first big rarity revealed, though, was the triple star rarity, sometimes called the Shining Rarity, because it is exclusive to Shining cards from the Neo era. This is a set of 10 cards, but the first 2 to be released, Shining Magikarp and Shining Gyarados, don't actually have the triple star symbol. Now, there is actually a double star rarity, but chances are you've never seen it. This is reserved for old Japanese trophy cards. The famous Pokemon illustrator actually has this too, but this rarity, along with the triple star rarity, have since then been retired. Oh, and I should mention the white diamond and white star rarities. These were only used for a few cards and only in Japan. This was scrapped pretty quickly, but then white symbols were used on darker colored cards for visibility. For example, this retro energy. The white diamond doesn't represent anything special, it's just a regular uncommon card. And before we move on to the EX era, a promotional card, or just a promo card, does not have a rarity symbol. Instead, it has a big black star that says promo on it. Older cards have a black star up near the illustration window, but newer cards have it in the lower corner where it can act as both a set symbol and a rarity symbol, if that's how you want to look at it. Moving into the EX era, we get two brand new rarity symbols. The first is a hollow star found on EX Pokemon. Now in this case, the star is actually colorless, or maybe negative you could say. What you're seeing is the hollow pattern that is usually behind the ink. So I'm just going to call it a hollow star. And this hollow star can also be found on the reverse hollows from many of the EX sets. Remember, back during this time, reverse hollows weren't nearly as common and disposable as they are today. And on that note, a reverse hollow is not a rarity, it's a type of card. So a reverse hollow can be common, uncommon, or rare. And the next is the gold star. These are exclusive to star Pokemon, which are kind of like this generation's shining Pokemon. They're extremely rare and pretty expensive if you want to collect them today. The rarity symbol looks a lot like the hollow star, but it is specifically gold. But unfortunately, the gold star doesn't stick around for very long. But to summarize what we have so far, we have the regular rarity symbols, but a level beyond the star is the hollow star, and this is referred to as an ultra rare. So the Diamond and Pearl era introduced level X Pokemon, which are kind of like new, cooler EX cards, but they have the same rarity symbol. So while they represent something new, the symbol didn't change. But we did get something new, kind of. The hollow star now gets applied to secret rares. For example, let's look at the Stormfront secret rares. They're remakes of the original base set Charmander, Charmeleon, and Charizard. Their rarity symbols are hollow stars, just like the level X cards, so they are ultra rares. However, the Japanese version of these have white rarity symbols. So at this point, the hollow star rarity is being used to represent ultra rare Pokemon cards. In the Heart Gold and Soul Silver era, legend cards were introduced. These have crazy detailed artwork that span 2 cards each. And of course, they get their own rarity symbol, which is actually a gold star with a white outline. This is a lot like the gold star cards or the shining cards, where they have their own rarity that is retired when the next generation of cards come out. So we never see this again after the legend cards. And the ultra rares for this era are the prime Pokemon and secret rares. These have the hollow star as a rarity symbol. For the black and white era, they brought back EX cards, and they carried on the hollow foil star we are now so familiar with. However, the Japanese TCG switched to a big fat letter R for some reason. Black and white also introduced the first ever full art cards to the TCG. Full arts were a big deal and deserved their own rarity symbol, so they just used the hollow star again. But only on the first 2. After this, full arts got a new rarity symbol, which is a white star outline. This is really similar to how the first 2 shining Pokemon did not debut the triple star rarity. The secret rares from this era also use hollow stars, like the EX Pokemon, because they are ultra rares, except for the Dragon Vault expansion, which used nothing, I guess because the set is so small. But these hollow stars would actually be UR for the Japanese TCG, which of course stands for ultra rare. X and Y actually carried on the EX cards this time, but now introduced Mega EX or MEX. However, the rarity symbols remained unchanged on the international cards. In Japan, they switched EX card rarities from R to RR, which stands for double rare. Break cards, which are known as some of the most visually appealing cards ever created, get a white star outline as a rarity symbol, just like the full art cards. But wait, the full art cards don't have the white star outline anymore. They switched back to regular hollow stars for X and Y. So only the break cards have the white star outline in X and Y. But finally, we get something interesting. This symbol means alternate art. Some cards were now being printed with artwork that varied from their previous card, even though all of the text is the same. For example, this M. Lucario EX is number 55, while the alternate art version at the end of the set is 55A. Now, these alternate art cards still have the hollow star, so they are an ultra rare rarity. but I wanted to mention them because they play a part in the new rarity system later on. So with Sun and Moon, we got rainbow cards. For a card to be a rainbow rare, it would have to be a regular GX and a full art GX first. And annoyingly, all these cards share the same rarity symbol, but thankfully the Japanese version cleared up a little bit. A Japanese GX is RR, a full art GX is SR, which stands for secret rare, and the rainbow GX will be HR, which means hyper rare. Over here in the English version, I think most people just call these rainbow rares, which has to be the most straightforward and simple way to identify these. But you could say hyper rare and also be correct, but you could also say ultra rare and be correct. That's right, a rainbow card is a rainbow rare, or a hyper rare, or an ultra rare. Oh, and Sun and Moon introduced gold cards, which look amazing but basically suffer from the same thing as the rainbow cards. And we also got to see a return of shining Pokemon in this era, so that means a return of the triple star rarity, right? No, just a hollow star again. But the Japanese version got its own shining rarity symbol, which I think represents some sort of cosmic star thingy. Then we also got prism rares, which oddly enough just get a regular star. But the Japanese versions get a PR, which of course means prism rare. And then this is kind of weird, but the Japanese cards get some additional rarities like a TR rarity near the end of Sun and Moon, which stands for trainer rare. But we actually got these as alternate art cards. The Hidden Fates expansion had a Shiny Vault subset. A subset is a smaller set inside of a larger set. So if you open a Hidden Fates booster pack, you could pull a Shiny Vault card. Anyways, the full art shiny GX Pokemon use the full art rarity symbol that is a white outline for some reason. So you can see now that we have a lot of different kinds of cards being introduced each generation, but the Pokemon Company doesn't like to introduce new rarity symbols. As a result, this huge selection of cards are all considered ultra rares. Okay, Sword and Shield gets a little bit complicated, and I can't help but wonder if this led to the rarity system overhaul that we see in Scarlet and Violet. V and VMAX and V-Star cards were the new kids on the block and carried on the Hollow Star legacy. These are ultra rares. But we also got Amazing Rares. This is a collection of 9 cards spread out over 2 sets. And their rarity symbol is the letter A with a color wheel behind it. This closely resembles the textured splash of art behind the Pokemon on the actual card. So I guess this is what it took to finally get a new rarity symbol. But after Amazing Rares, we got Radiant Rares. Once again, this was a little collection of 16 specialty cards spread over 5 sets. But this time, they got the Hollow Star as a rarity symbol. However, the Japanese version has a bold K. Why K? Well, it's a translation of the Japanese word kagayaku, which means sparkling or radiant. Now, let's talk about the Trainer Gallery or the Galarian Gallery. These are subsets. For example, let's look at Brilliant Stars. This set has a total of 172 cards, but once you count the secret rares, it comes up to 186. However, there is a Trainer Gallery subset. This is an additional 30 cards with their own separate numbering system denoted with a TG. And the Galarian Gallery from Crown Zenith uses GG and has a total of 70 cards to the subset. But they still use the Hollow Star. They're just ultra rares. So Sword and Shield was introducing a whole bunch of new ultra rare cards. Meanwhile, the Japanese TCG was actually building out a pretty good rarity system that actually made sense. If you check one of the ETB booklets from this era, you can see that they were pretending to have a well-developed rarity system, but the actual cards just didn't reflect this. Now, the biggest hits of the Sword and Shield packs were alternate art cards, but they didn't say alternate art on them, or in the book, or on the official website. So new players had to go to Reddit for clarification, and no one deserves that. So the TCG got a rarity rebirth. Now, I've already made a whole video on the new rarity system, so if you want to go into more detail, I'll add a link below the like button. So what happened is that we basically got a whole new lineup of rarity symbols. Unfortunately, there remains some confusion, but ultimately it's much better and aligns with the Japanese TCG mostly. It now has a clear scale to follow: 1 star, 2 star, 3 star. Black, silver, gold. This is how it should have been years ago. I remember seeing a shining Tyranitar when I was a kid and instantly understanding that it was a big deal because it had 3 stars. It's intuitive and even kids get it right away. And alternate arts no longer exist. Both the symbol and the confusing colloquial term have been retired. While these cards can still be considered alternate versions, they are officially defined as illustration rare and special illustration rare cards. So then, what the heck is this? Or this? If you see a little Pokemon silhouette instead of a traditional rarity symbol, that means the card is from a pre-constructed deck. And this goes all the way back to the start of the TCG, like the intro pack from 1999, which came with 2 half decks. The cards have a Squirtle or Bulbasaur on them, but it's up where the set symbol used to be. In the rarity spot is the card's number relevant to the deck. This changed though, and now the Pokemon silhouette is at the bottom, where it can act as both a set symbol and a rarity symbol. Okay, let's finally talk about the juiciest of all rarities. No rarity. That's right, there is no rarity symbol on these cards. Now, you might already know that the first ever Pokemon TCG cards didn't have rarity symbols. So in 1996, the TCG launched in Japan with Expansion Pack, which is what we call base set. You know the whole first edition Shadowless nonsense? Well, none of that existed in Japan. So Japanese cards did not have first editions. So many consider the Japanese no rarity cards to be the equivalent of first edition. What I'm getting at here is that no rarity is ironically the most rare. But the no rarity cards didn't only come from booster packs. No rarity cards can also come from theme decks or other pre-constructed decks such as a quick starter gift set. Also, many promo cards from this time in Japan lack a rarity symbol, but overall, no rarity cards were only produced in Japan in very limited quantities, so they're highly sought after. And of course, there are some cards produced today that don't have rarity symbols, such as trophy cards and energy cards. Well, some energy cards actually do have a rarity symbol, but they are cards within the set, like this Psychic Energy, for example. I hope that clears things up, but feel free to ask a question in the comments if you have any, and I'll do my best to answer. I usually do. Also, this is a great time to get up, have a snack, go pee, and maybe subscribe. Alright, so moving on to the final stretch of the masterclass. I think it's time to kick back and watch some easier videos. This next one is a short and sweet lesson on finding the value of your Pokemon card. This is the most common question I get, the most common question I see on other channels, and it's the most common Reddit post, Discord chat, whatever. Every beginner asks this question. So here's my answer. What is the value of this first edition Charizard? If you said B, you'd be correct. But a year from now, the answer might be A, or maybe even C. Pokemon card values change all the time, so I'm going to teach you by the end of this video how to properly value your cards. I've got 3 examples from easy to very difficult, so you should be able to accurately value any card you come across. Oh, but this is fake. Okay, here's our first example. We need 3 pieces of information from this card. We need the name, the number at the bottom of the card, and finally we need the condition of the card. Now, just like any other collectible, the condition is the most important factor, and we're gonna give it a quick rating based on this set of guidelines. And if you want to know more about this, then eBay has some great resource material as well as TCG Player. I will leave the link in the description for you. But for now, we're gonna call this near mint because there's no obvious damage. Okay, we're gonna take those 3 pieces of information and type them into the eBay search. But we're not done yet. One of the crazy things about eBay is that people can ask whatever they want for their item. What we're gonna do is we're gonna go and filter our results to the sold and completed listings. That way we can see what people are actually paying for the card right now. So here we are at the search results, but we also want to turn graded to off in the filter because we don't want to see the price of graded cards. So here we are, I'm seeing 142, 155, 150, 130, 140, and these all have around $20 to $30 worth of shipping on them. Okay, so we got some numbers to work with. The next thing I'm gonna do is jump over to TCG Player and cross-reference these prices. Okay, and looking at the latest sales, I'm seeing prices like 115, 105, 139. Now these prices do not include shipping. So looking at all this, I'm gonna say this card is worth around 150 bucks. All right, example number 2, this one's a little bit trickier. And oh, it's Blastoise. We all know Blastoise. So let's grab our information. The name is Blastoise. The number is 2 out of 102. And I'm gonna say near mint again because this is pack fresh and it has no visible damage. Now looking at the search results, something isn't quite right. I'm seeing prices from $7 all the way up to a couple hundred. So let's have another look at that card. Okay, now I see that there is a stamp on it. It's a Pikachu and it says 25. So this card is actually from the 2021 Celebrations set. Sometimes Pokemon cards get reprints and then they get a stamp on them. This is really important because the card may be worth a lot more or a lot less than the original print, so you can't ignore this. So now let's add Celebrations to the search query. Once again, we want to filter out the graded cards, and then we're going to turn on completed and sold items, and now let's look at the results. I'm seeing 12 bucks, $8, $10, $10, $10, some of these have shipping, some of these don't. So again, I'm gonna jump over to TCG Player. And yeah, it looks like this card might be around the $7 to $10 range. So that's what I'm gonna say. If I was gonna sell this card today, I'd probably put it up for 10 bucks. Okay, example number 3. This is a tough one. This is a graded Mewtwo. Now this is a base set card from 1999, so we have to look for a first edition stamp and a shadow. In this case, there are neither. So we're gonna add shadowless to the search query in eBay. But this card is also graded by a Canadian grading company called Mint. So we're gonna add that to the search query as well. After filtering for sold and completed, I don't see anything to compare this to. There's nothing sold recently. So now our only option is to compare this to a PSA graded card, a PSA 8. And this should be okay because Mint grades harsher than PSA. And I should mention, the value isn't going to be as high as a PSA card. Mint has only been around for 8 years and they don't have the reputation. Therefore, their grading service doesn't add the same level of value as PSA. So here we are looking at the search results for a PSA 8 shadowless Mewtwo, remember not first edition, and I'm seeing results in the 260 to 270 range. So let's say this card is worth around 265. Now remember, this is not PSA, this is Mint. So I did some calculations off screen, and Mint cards usually sell for around 60% of what a PSA equivalent would sell for. So let's subtract 40% off of that. That means this right here is worth around 160 bucks. I told you this one would be tough. Okay, a quick recap. You want the name, you want the number, and you want the condition. If it's tricky, make comparisons where you can and where it makes sense. This method works because we're comparing our card to sales within just the past few weeks. So you know exactly how much your card is worth today. So as you can tell, it's not easy to answer because it's nuanced. I can't tell you what your card is worth without knowing a handful of details. Hopefully that covers the vast majority of nuances and you can pass it on to others. Alright, so for the last segment here, I'm going to show a series of videos on Pokemon card protection, storage, and general care. These are critical lessons to build value or interest, essentially. Pokemon cards generally go up in value, like many collectibles, so keeping them in mint condition is key. Some of these videos are older, so as I mentioned at the start, please excuse me for being uncomfortable and green on camera, but the information is still good. In fact, it's important too. So let's rapid fire a few short ones. Do you have a favorite Pokemon card? This is one of my favorite cards, but if you look closely, it has a dent on it. It's damaged, resulting in a loss of value. And then I found this same dent on another one of my cards, and another one. I bought someone's old collection last year, and when I was sorting through their cards, I found that exact same dent. So now my collection has this sort of dent dynasty. You may have heard that 3-ring binders brutalize your cards, and this is only kind of true. While these dents on my cards are from binder rings, and we'll talk about that, the truth is more nuanced. I've been collecting Pokemon cards since 1999, trading with other kids on the playground and the classroom, and we all used 3-ring binders. It was totally normal back then. But times have changed. You no longer go grab a cheap binder from Walmart, but instead you actually invest in these beautiful portfolios for your cherished cards with leather and zippers. And when you open one of these up, you'll notice that the rings are playing hide and seek. So how do rings ravage your cards? Well, you already know how these binders work, so I'm not going to bore you with that. The damage that rings can cause actually comes from negligence. I can store my cards in a 3-ring binder and they're not going to get damaged. Why? Because I'm very careful and methodical when I handle my cards. But if a friend or maybe my niece goes through my binder and is browsing my cards, well, that is like handing the keys over to a bulldozer. So for damage to occur, the card needs to come in contact with the ring. There's 3 different ways this can happen. The first is that the pages are not returned to the start position. So this is what I call the start position. It's really the end position as well. The pages are perpendicular to the spine. And so in this position, the rings really cause no threat to the cards inside. Now, when we're looking through the cards like this, the binder is in an open position. And this is where things get a little bit hairy. Watch. If I suddenly close the binder, the pages, they get pinched between the rings and the cover. In other words, our cards get pinched. And this is the culprit of those dents in my cards. Now, we'll come back to this, but the second scenario where cards can get damaged by the rings is when you're turning the pages. Now, we don't really just flip the page like a book. We actually have to pull at the page just a little bit of pressure, and that allows the page to freely move around the ring. See, if we drag it, that's where things can go bad, because the cards are now being dragged over the rings, and depending on how many pages you have in the binder, how big the rings are, and a few other factors, this can bend the cards, and this can really damage your cards. So proper handling and turning the pages properly will prevent this. Okay, so the third way that cards can be damaged by a ring binder is the pinch. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, just ask your fingertips what they remember from grade school. So this can happen when inserting or removing pages. The more pages you try to insert and remove at once, the greater risk this becomes. If one page slides out or goes out of place and you close those rings, they will pinch together and they will damage a card, okay? And this is pretty gnarly. This doesn't look good, it doesn't feel good. We want to avoid this at all costs. So this card that you saw earlier with the dent in it, I actually purchased this on eBay last year. The pictures looked great, but when it arrived, it had this dent in it. Now, I recognized this dent, and now so do you. So I reached out to the seller and I said, hey, thank you, everything was packaged nicely, but there's a dent in it. It's a binder ring dent. And he insisted that it was not him because he used D-ring binders. Therefore, the dent could not have possibly been his doing. Okay, so I've heard this before, and I see this on Reddit a lot. People seem to think that a D-ring binder magically prevents any damage from happening to your cards. Now, I've thought about this, and I believe that the people who say this and the people who have actually used a D-ring binder are not the same people. Okay, all jokes aside, Yes, that was a joke. D-ring binders, they'll help prevent this issue. If you look here, you can see how your pages are less likely to be pinched. But just because the ring is in the shape of a D does not mean that the risk is gone, okay? So yeah, a lot of this is just binder banter. 3-ring binders are really not as bad as everyone makes them out to be, but modern binders are just so much better and totally worth the investment. Should we be wearing gloves when handling expensive cards? On one hand, it's great. On the other, it's just not left. I've done a bunch of research and I found that it's actually kind of nuanced, and there are some situations where wearing gloves might actually offer a helping hand. So I'm not going to bury the answer at the end of the video. The answer is no. You should not wear gloves when opening cards. But the bigger, more interesting question is why? I searched Google, forums, YouTube, and my own brain for all of the points for and against wearing gloves. I even busted out the microscope for this one. So let's kick off with the compelling evidence against wearing gloves. So the whole idea here is that wearing gloves should protect your cards from your hands, damage that can lower the value or the perceived grade of the card. When we see professionals handling really precious items, they're usually wearing gloves. So taken at face value, this seems like an obvious conclusion. But then I stumbled upon this article by the Museum of London explaining that their paper and book conservators don't often use gloves when handling objects such as old books. So in that context, wearing gloves to open a booster pack does make you feel kind of silly. I dove deeper and I found that lots of archaeologists and other professionals don't actually wear gloves when handling ancient artifacts or books or like Viking swords. For a handful of reasons, but they do all have one thing in common. They all wash their hands first. One of the points I see referenced the most, both for ancient artifacts and trading cards, is that you often want to feel the item that you're holding with your fingertips. Wearing gloves can reduce the tactile feedback in your fingertips. CGC Cards made a video where they explain that you sometimes have to feel a card to tell if it's counterfeit or not. And from my personal experience, I totally believe this. I have handled a lot of Pokemon cards in the last 20, almost 30 years, and sometimes I don't even notice that they're fake until I feel them. There is a certain muscle memory that you earn over time when handling the same object. I can tell what an authentic Pokemon card feels like, and I can tell when something is off, and wearing gloves may get in the way of this. Another thing they mentioned in that video is that you could leave fingerprints on cards. Now, when it comes to Pokemon cards, I haven't really experienced this, but if you're handling something like Topps Chrome, those are fingerprint magnets. So I ran a small experiment. I didn't wash my hands for a couple of hours, and I just did some regular household chores. I played with my cats, and then I pressed my right thumb up against the face of a card. After this, I went and thoroughly washed my hands, thoroughly dried my hands, and I pressed the same thumb up against the same face of the card, but on the other side. And here are the results. There's a very stark difference here. You can see my oily, dirty thumbprint on the right, but my freshly washed print on the left is almost invisible. I can just barely see it. I tried again with a fresh glove, and it had similar results to my washed thumbprint. So then, I popped the card under the microscope. Here it's very visible, and you can clearly see my thumbprint. If I turn the light off, you can see just how much dirt and dead skin came off with that single press. Gross. On the left, it's difficult to see. Even with the light off, the card looks relatively untouched. The only reason I can tell that there's a thumbprint on this side of the card is because I know about it. And while we're here, let's quickly look at my glove under the microscope. This is a nitrile glove, and although the box says powder-free, I can see something on it. I'm not sure what that is, but this glove is fresh and straight from the box, so I don't know what it could be. But otherwise, the glove actually looks kind of rough. It's interesting to see. Do you think that this is rougher than just my skin? Could this damage a card? Okay, so if you do accidentally get a fingerprint on a card, you can wipe it off. You have to use a microfiber. You have to use a brand new microfiber, okay? Not one from under your sink or from in your car. It has to be brand new, and it has to be the kind that you get to clean glasses. The scratch-free kind. But it can be done, and lots of professional grading services do this. So another argument that I came across is that gloves can reduce your sense of pressure. So they'll get in the way and you can't really tell how much pressure you're applying to the edges of a card when you pick it up. I'm kind of back and forth on this one. I get it, but I don't really know where I stand. I used to work in an industry where I had to wear gloves all day long, and the pressure I applied with my fingertips was critical, and I did fine. Also, surgeons wear gloves, and that seems like a job that has little room for error. So I think it's a great point to bring up, and it's something to keep in mind, and it's all relevant really. When it comes down to it, if you are handling the edge of an expensive card, maybe the glove can mask the amount of pressure you're applying. And so some gloves might actually be rougher or harsher than human skin. Human skin is soft and squishy, and gloves might not be as soft or squishy. We just saw what my nitrile glove looked like under the microscope, and that has me kind of wondering if that's softer than my skin or not. So there are 3 kinds of gloves that are typically going to be used for something like this. We have latex. Latex might be the best because it's really stretchy and it'll form to your fingers and you'll get a nice tight fit. And then there's nitrile, which is usually used in place of latex for allergy reasons, and it has very similar properties. And then we have vinyl gloves. Now these don't really stretch. You may have used them before. They're clear sometimes, and they don't like form to your fingers. So I would avoid using these. And then I've seen some people think that it's a good idea to use cotton gloves. It's not. Just don't use cotton gloves. I've seen some videos where people use gloves to open cards, and there's one thing that really bothers me. Okay, let's stop for just a sec and say that if you are wearing gloves to open cards, whether it's right or wrong or whatever, they should probably fit, right? If they're too big, you're definitely gonna snag a corner or damage your cards, like for sure. So it's a bit of a pet peeve, but yeah, they should be nice and tight. Anyways, I saw a comment somewhere saying that wearing gloves during a live stream might actually build trust with your viewers. So people jump onto the live stream, they see that you're wearing gloves, you look more professional, and they might stick around. And I think this is a pretty interesting idea. I think it's a good theory, but I have to disagree. I would argue that there's going to be more people who leave because you're wearing gloves. And if they don't leave, they might comment and start warning you of the dangers of wearing gloves, which could turn other people. I think the better strategy here is to not wear gloves, and if someone says something, just politely educate them. And the majority of your viewers will be on your side. And another argument that I saw was that you might want to wear gloves if you have long, sharp fingernails. Now, I don't know where I stand on this one because I've always kept my fingernails short, but I think that just not wearing gloves still might be better. I don't know about this one. It's kind of interesting. If you have long nails, go ahead and leave a comment and let me know what you think about this, because it's hard for me to have any input. Okay, so it's probably better to just ditch the gloves and wash your hands. And I'll just say it again, wash your hands. And here's a good tip, wash your phone too, because if you don't wash your phone and you wash your hands, you're just gonna get oil and dirt on your hands again after holding your phone before you even get started. Oh, and so we should probably quickly talk about skin types. So there's oily skin, dry skin, and then there's both, which we call combination skin. And each kind of skin is going to pose different risks to opening cards. For example, if you have oily skin, the obvious risk is getting your natural oils on the card. Simple solution, wash your hands. Just like my experiment earlier, this solved it. And when you do wash your hands, some soaps can be basic while others are actually acidic, so make sure you get all of that soap residue off. And then we have dry skin, so this actually has its own risks. If your skin is dry, it's rough, maybe it's flaky, and I guess this could damage a card. So if you have really dry hands, you might moisturize, which solves the issue, but then we don't want to get moisturizer on the cards. So I would say use the minimal amount of moisturizer, and before you handle cards, make sure that your hands are completely dry and all that moisturizer is soaked in. A good tip here is that you can press your thumb or your fingertips up against a piece of glass or a mirror, and then you'll see if you leave a fingerprint behind, kind of just like that Topps Chrome card earlier. And if you don't have a piece of glass nearby, well, you actually do, your phone screen. Okay, so the argument for gloves. Let's look at some scenarios where you might actually want to wear gloves to handle cards. And the first one is if you are sorting an old collection that didn't belong to you. So let's say, for example, you went to a garage sale and you purchased someone's old collection and it was just disgusting. Like there's a bad smell coming from the corner. Okay, I don't want to get too detailed here, but you know what I mean. And to go through that collection of cards, if you wanted to wear gloves because you don't know what kind of gunk or grime has been on those cards for 10, 20, maybe 30 years, I don't think I would argue. I think gloves might be a good idea. And another one is if you have rough hands, like really rough hands. So if you lift weights, you'll know that you get calluses, but this isn't enough. I mean like really rough hands. Some people have been working construction or in an automotive job or something like that where their hands just get really, really rough for 10, 20, 30, maybe even 40 years. So maybe this is a bit of a stretch, but yeah, if your hands can cut glass, then maybe wearing gloves could be beneficial. Another scenario is medical conditions. Some people have medical conditions and they might want to wear gloves when handling cards. That's it. If this is the case, please be respectful. And the last thing I could think of is if your hands are really dirty and you need to open cards like right now for some reason. It's kind of funny and I know I'm reaching, but this might be a situation where you want to pop some gloves on. Top loaders versus card savers. Which is better? Well, they're not battling it out in an epic duel. They're more like the Batman and Superman of card safety. They both save the day, just in different caped crusader styles. In this video, I'll go over the pros and cons of each. Card savers. The first thing I want to point out is that Card Saver is a brand name. These are actually called semi-rigid sleeves, but most of us just call them card savers, kind of like calling all tissues Kleenex. In reality, this is the Card Saver 1 made by the company Cardboard Gold. These guys own the majority of the Card Saver market, but Ultra Pro, Beckett, Voltex, Gemloader, BCW, and other companies also make semi-rigids. However, they're not all the same. For example, here I have a semi-rigid made by Ultra Pro, and you'll notice that it's a little bit smaller. Now, it serves the same function, but whether this is better is, well, up to you. Pros. The main strength of a card saver is its delicious sandwich-like properties. You see, these two planes of plastic are actually in contact with each other, so when a card is placed into a card saver, it's held in place nice and snug. This is why card savers are superior for shipping purposes. The UPS guy can punt your package like a rabid Pikachu, and the cards still won't shift inside the card saver. Another point for card savers is that PSA actually asks that you submit your card in these. That's right, if you are sending cards to PSA, you'll need to purchase some card savers. Cons. However, there are 3 main drawbacks to semi-rigid holders. The first is that they're actually semi-rigid. This means that they are bendable. When you ship these, you need to use 2 pieces of cardboard and sandwich the card saver in between them. It's pretty easy to do, and again, PSA asks that you do this when you ship them your cards. The second drawback is that it can be a little bit frustrating to insert and remove your cards. Since these holders are so tight, you have to sort of bow the opening and then hold it open while also inserting the card. And if you want your card to be perfectly centered, then you'll probably have to make small adjustments. Oh, and don't laugh, always put on a sleeve before inserting. And lastly, card savers are kind of annoying to store. Trading card products tend to be made with 3 by 4 inch dimensions, so card savers won't fit inside deck boxes, storage boxes, ETB boxes, and other stuff. You can get card saver binders, but they cost twice as much as a regular binder. Now, as a side note, you may have noticed these small pink tabs. These are pull tabs that I use for easy removal of cards. I usually just use post-it notes, but you can use the plastic ones, or some companies such as Gemloader actually make sleeves with pull tabs built in. Top loaders. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, we have top loaders. These are known as rigid sleeves because they're always stiff, kind of like going through puberty. These are pretty easy to find and made by a handful of different companies. I find these to be more accessible than card savers, having seen them in all big box stores like Walmart, but that just might be the part of the world I live in. Pros. These are harder than card savers, and the frame around the holder provides structural integrity, preventing any bending. The material is thicker too, which means these could potentially offer more protection from potential puncture wounds or sharp objects. There also seem to be more products out there made for top loaders when compared to card savers. There are a lot more top loader binders on the market. We have display frames, stands, and special boxes too. Cons. One of the biggest drawbacks to top loaders is the gap. There is about a 1mm gap between the two panes of plastic where you slide the card. This offers two potential risks. One is that dust can gather inside the top loader, leading to scratches. Dust is dust, but sometimes I'll get one in the mail with animal hair in it. Furthermore, if something more abrasive like a grain of sand gets inside, you could really cause damage. This is the dust trap gap, no cap. The other risk that the gap provides is the actual movement of the card. While card savers hold the card in place, top loaders do not. It's pretty easy to see that the card will slide around if jostled. A quick fix is to double sleeve your card. You should absolutely be using a sleeve in the first place, but using a second sleeve can add that extra thickness you need to prevent the card from bouncing around during shipping. So which one do you buy? Both. Now, I'm not saying you have to go out now and purchase both products right now, but you should eventually utilize both top loaders and card savers in your collection. Again, like Batman and Superman, why not have both in your collection? In addition to this, you could also try magnetic one-touch holders, all sizes of sleeves, and any other neat trading card products you find. My point is, don't limit yourself to one product because a friend or some YouTuber told you so. Explore your options and find out what's best for you. Okay, so a quick summary. Semi-rigid holders are better for shipping, submitting to grading services. However, they arguably offer less protection outside of shipping, and they might be more difficult to store and a little bit frustrating to use. Rigid sleeves are better for using with most TCG products, storage for your own collection, and they are more readily available. However, cards can shift inside the top loader, debris can fall inside, potentially damaging your card. And you should always use sleeves with each product. Check this out, there's actually a gap in the top of a top loader. Now in a previous video, I called this a collector's best friend, and I think that's a pretty accurate moniker, but you can damage your cards if you use these incorrectly. So here are the do's and don'ts of using top loaders. Do double sleeve your cards before inserting them into a top loader. This is going to add extra width to your card, so it won't be able to rattle around inside. You can also reverse double sleeve your cards, so you don't leave an edge exposed and that card isn't going to slide out during shipping. Don't insert a card without sleeving it, ever, no matter what. If you do this, the card can still rattle around inside, and if there's something abrasive in there, it's going to get scratched. In addition to this, the edges and corners are going to get banged up. A top loader does a great job protecting your card from external damage, but you have to remember the hazards that are already inside. Imagine a grain of sand somehow fell inside of this and you put a full foil card in here and start moving it around. Yeah, you and that card are going to have a bad day. Do store your top loaders upside down. This is going to prevent any of those pesky particles from going inside. If you wanted, you could also display your cards in top loaders upside down, although I will admit this is a little bit weird. Do use pull tabs. So you can buy sleeves with pull tabs built in, or you can just use sticky notes. And what this does is this makes a little handle so you can easily pull your card out of the top loader without sticking your big stinky thumb in there, possibly damaging the card or your nail cuticle. Don't keep your top loaders past their expiration date. No, they don't actually have an expiration date, but once they're used and they're all scratched up, go ahead and retire them. They could hurt your cards. You can breathe new life into them by using them as card dividers or extra support when shipping. Do ship your cards in top loaders. Now, most would agree that card savers are better at shipping, but top loaders work excellent as well. Just make sure you double sleeve your cards and use some painter's tape to secure the top loader to a larger, more rigid piece of cardboard. Do like the video. If you've purchased any kind of sleeves or TCG accessory, you may have noticed PVC and acid free on the side of the package. But what's up with this? What is PVC? Why do I have to look out for it? And is there really acid in my sleeves? I've been collecting Pokemon cards since 1999, and I still didn't really understand what all this acid-free stuff was about. So I did the research, and this is what I found. So what is it? Let's start with the term acid. The term acid-free gained popularity in the 90s in the sports cards niche, but it's hard to say exactly where the term came from because, well, it doesn't really mean anything. Acid-free became a marketing buzzword used by manufacturers and collectors and suppliers to basically describe a sleeve that won't damage your cards. Acid is a very scary word, so maybe that's why they chose it. But at this point, collectors were finding that their old sleeves from their old collections were actually yellowing, getting brittle, starting to break apart, and even secrete a little bit of oil. Okay, so acid-free is a made-up marketing term, but why were people's sleeves breaking down? So back in the day, sleeves were made out of polyvinyl chloride, known as PVC or just vinyl. Yeah, vinyl, like a vinyl record or the vinyl wrap on your car. Vinyl's actually pretty awesome. It's used all over the world, but it has one huge drawback. It breaks down over time. So over long periods, which can be accelerated by the right conditions, vinyl will start to become brittle. It will yellow and start to break apart. Sometimes it will secrete a little bit of oil, just like in trading card sleeves. So yeah, vinyl sleeves or PVC sleeves, obviously terrible for your cards. But in the 90s, trading cards hadn't really been around for that long. So people were finding their old collections from the 60s or 70s or 80s and finding that the sleeves were actually starting to break down and damage their cards. Okay, so how can you tell if your sleeves are PVC free or not? Well, for starters, it's kind of hard to find PVC sleeves these days. If you've bought anything in the last few years, it's more than likely polypropylene, or for short, PP. Although I did hear some rumors that during the pandemic, some companies cut corners and they used PVC sleeves instead of polypropylene when polypropylene was hard to get. So you might want to take that into consideration if you bought sleeves during the pandemic. But if you want to check just in case, just look at the packaging. It should say acid-free or PVC-free. Or if you don't see that, look for a recycling symbol. If the symbol has a number 3 with a V below it, you actually do have PVC sleeves. If it has a number 5 with PP below it, then they're polypropylene. So pretty much anything TCG related is going to be polypropylene. This is sleeves, top loaders, card savers, binder pages. So polypropylene, this is an inert material. Inert just means that it doesn't break down over time. So V, bad, and PP, good. So what happens if you do use PVC sleeves? Well, nothing, for a while. So if you actually do manage to find some PVC sleeves that were manufactured recently or you purchased recently, they should be relatively safe to use. PVC or vinyl, it takes a long time to break down. So they're kind of safe to use if it's not long term. If you're putting your cards away for storage, then I would ditch them and get polypropylene instead. I did see some old posts and comments suggesting that PVC can actually start to break down after 6 months, but I couldn't confirm this. Just to be safe though, I wouldn't put my first edition Charizard in a PVC sleeve, no matter what. Generally, vinyl does take a long time to break down, like 5, 10, or maybe even 20 years. A lot of phone cases are made out of vinyl. If you ever bought a clear phone case and you notice that after a year it's starting to turn yellow, well, that's why. The material is starting to break down. But phone cases are subject to heat, direct sunlight, and rapid temperature changes and all sorts of elements. So I imagine this would speed up the process. If you have some PVC sleeves that are in a humidity controlled, temperature controlled container, then they should be okay for a long time. But I mean, whatever, just get rid of them and buy some polypropylene sleeves instead, and you don't have to worry about it. And if you have some old PVC sleeves laying around, just check them. Are they yellow? Are they brittle? Do they feel oily to the touch? If yes, then get rid of them. If not, then they're probably okay to use in a pinch. Okay, one more thing that I keep hearing all the time. I see comments about this everywhere. People say that the official Pokemon sleeves, the ones you get in the Elite Trainer boxes, are not PVC free. I thought, that's kind of odd. So I went and grabbed a pack that I have, and it doesn't say anywhere on the packaging or on the sleeves themselves that it's PVC free. And I thought, oh crap, are these actually not PVC free? But then I checked the official Pokemon website where it clearly states that they are PVC and acid free, so don't worry about it. Okay, so to sum it all up, PVC sleeves are bad, yes, but only once they start to break down. If they haven't broken down yet, you can probably use them if you're in a pinch, but polypropylene sleeves or PP sleeves, they are like super available and affordable, so I would highly recommend just getting some of those. And Pokemon sleeves are perfectly safe to use. Today we're diving deep into a dire aspect of card collecting, whitening. Learn the mysteries behind whitening, how it happens, and the essential tips to prevent it. Whether you're into Pokemon cards or other trading cards such as Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh!, this information still applies. So let's jump into it. What is whitening? Simply put, whitening is when the edge of a card sustains damage, and the white cardstock becomes visible when facing the card directly. When you're buying, selling, or just collecting Pokemon cards, the condition is the most important factor. It's just the nature of a collector. We want rare items in mint condition and we want it buried with us when we die. The tiniest scratch can make the difference between a 9 and a perfect 10 when you're getting your cards graded. This could mean the loss of significant value, sometimes even thousands of dollars. One of the key things to check for is whitening. Whitening can occur on the edges or corners of a card. I suppose it could occur on the face of the card, but we would just call that damage, not whitening. When we say whitening, we're referring specifically to the edges and corners of a card. But what causes whitening? Let's explore from the edges to the microscopic level. Causes of whitening. Whitening is due to premature wear on the card's edges, resulting in a noticeable fraying and whitening effect. Pokemon cards, made of layers of cardstock, start as large sheets that are then cut up into individual cards. The face and reverse receive a sexy varnish coating, while the edges are left unprotected and susceptible to wear. There are 4 main culprits behind whitening: poorly cut edges, mishandling, moisture, and improper storage. Let's break down each one. Poorly cut edges. If the edges of a card are poorly cut, this could result in whitening. Sometimes we pull cards straight out of a booster pack only to find small amounts of whitening, and this is irritating, for sure. It's widely believed that this is due to dull blades from the factory. Back in 2020, we saw a massive increase in the demand for Pokemon cards, and the factories were printing cards at full capacity. We saw a lot of whitening that year. So this is a factor when considering whitening, but unfortunately it's out of our control, so we have to live with it. Mishandling. Remember shoving cards into your denim pockets or using an elastic band and snap around a deck of cards? Those were classic examples of mishandling, causing abnormal pressure to the edges, creating whitening. We were just kids, of course, but today we no longer have that excuse. Again, a small scratch or crease can seriously drop the value of an expensive card. So we have to be careful when handling our shiny pieces of cardboard. This is why you sometimes see people using gloves or shaking violently when they pull the first edition Charizard. But this shouldn't be intimidating. It's pretty simple actually. Just be gentle with the card and everything should be okay. When inserting the card into a sleeve, we are going to avoid applying pressure to the edges. In most cases, this won't cause damage, but now and then you'll get a tight sleeve or a tight card saver and you may want to push down on the edge. When inserting a card into a binder pocket, we want to avoid dragging the corners on the rough page, unless the card belongs to your arch nemesis, obviously. If you're inserting a valuable card into a binder pocket, always use a sleeve. There are a dozen more scenarios where you could potentially cause whitening by mishandling the card, but as a general rule, just be careful, be gentle, be mindful of the card's edges, and you should be okay. Moisture. The glossy coating may protect against water on the card's face, but the edges are still vulnerable. Moisture absorption softens the edges, making them more prone to premature wear and whitening. If your mom accidentally threw some of your cards into the washing machine when you were a kid, then you already know what water damage looks like. but we are referring to smaller amounts of moisture, compromising the integrity of the cardstock along the edge. If you or your kids are big into cards, then they're probably everywhere throughout the house. The risk of water damage is always there. If a single drop of water lands on the face of the card, you'll probably be able to just roll it off if you're quick, but if it touches the edge, it will be absorbed and swell into the cardstock almost immediately. From this point onwards, the card is going to be very susceptible to whitening, even though you may have not noticed the moisture. If this happens, take whatever steps you can to dry the card and remove the moisture. Improper storage. Cards must be sleeved and stored correctly to avoid whitening. Don't laugh at this next part because it is not funny. Always use protection. There are dozens of different storage methods for cards, all with different purposes. But you should be sleeving your cards at the very least. Sleeves protect the edges of your cards, preventing whitening. One thing I'd like to touch on here is the Facebook marketplace listings where you'll often see hundreds of cards just thrown into a box. Do you want whitening? Because that's how you get whitening. Truthfully, it's pretty darn easy to avoid whitening when it comes to storage. Just take care of your cards. And I get it, some people just don't know. Parents, grandparents, friends, relatives who aren't into cards might not consider the edges when moving or storing them. So if this is you, please just take a moment to not dump the cards into a shoebox. And don't shake the box. Can you fix whitening? Unfortunately, whitening can't be fixed without risking further damage to the card. I've tried. We should talk about fixing whitening versus hiding whitening. Now, I love eBay for buying cards. In my opinion, it's the best online marketplace for Pokemon cards, but I will admit there is some shady stuff going on sometimes. If you know what to look for, you'll be fine. For example, some people will try to hide whitening, and I've seen this done with two different methods. First is blue ink. Whitening is easiest to see on the back of a Pokemon card, where the dark blue ink provides a contrast to the white cardstock. But what some people have done is gently color in the white with a blue pen. The other method is using a white background. Another trick I've seen here and there. Let's try this. Place the card with exceptional whitening on a white background and on a black background. It really does make a difference. If you're looking at purchasing a card and you suspect this might be happening, ask for a photo of the back with a black background. But anyway, the answer is no. Whitening cannot be fixed. Your only option is to go back in time and prevent it from happening in the first place. Preventing whitening. The best defense against whitening is fully automatic firearms. I mean, immediate sleeving and storage in protective devices. Handling cards without sleeves will risk whitening if there are any accidents. If you're just a collector, then the key is storing your cards properly. Use some of the handling guidelines we've gone over here and you should be okay. Now, if you're a player of the TCG, then things can get a little more difficult since you'll be handling your cards often. You'll obviously have your cards in some sleeves that are designed for play, but also consider your deck box or your carrying case. And Pokemon cards usually have multiple variants of a card. For example, the recent Pokemon 151 set had 3 different Charizard EX cards. They were all identical as far as gameplay goes, but you want to refrain from using the extra expensive special illustration rare Charizard EX and just use the rare one instead. Hopefully no one is using elastic bands anymore because this is punishable by death, and if you're dead then you can't buy more booster packs. How whitening affects grading. Grading is the ultimate preservation method, but whitening can impact a card's grade. Even a slight amount of whitening may affect a card's grade. Companies like PSA have strict standards, allowing only minimal whitening for a perfect 10 grade. Other companies may offer a grade above 10, emphasizing the importance of a pristine appearance. Will a little bit of whitening prevent your card from getting a 10? Well, it depends. If we look at eBay listings or even records on the PSA website itself, we can see that you can absolutely get a 10 while having a little bit of whitening on the card. But this is going to change depending on the grading service you choose. PSA is just one of many, and you should choose the service that suits your needs best. Some of these services are much more strict than PSA and offer grades higher than 10, such as a pristine 10. In this case, you'll want to be more strict yourself as you pre-grade your cards. The rip test. What is it? Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a method used to authenticate Pokemon cards. We're looking for a black line, and that should indicate that your card is authentic. No black line means your card might be fake. A lot of people call it the black ink layer, when in reality it's not ink at all. You see, Pokemon cards aren't printed on paper or cardboard, it's kind of in between, and it's a product called cardstock. It's made up of multiple different layers, but it's not adhered with glue. Instead, it's adhered with that black line. And what that is a black graphite laminate layer. This serves two purposes. Like I said, it actually laminates and holds the card together, but it also adds some rigidity to the Pokemon card. If we bend the card, it snaps back into place. To a degree, of course. Fake cards do not have this black graphite layer. They're simply just images printed on paper, and in some cases a sticker if it's counterfeiting a foil card. Now the rip test is fairly conclusive, it's quite accurate, but there is one downside. We don't actually want to rip our cards in half, so there are two other methods that you can use. When Pokemon cards are manufactured, they actually come out on this big sheet. The big sheet goes through a machine and it cuts it up into, well, cards. So basically, if we look at the side of a Pokemon card, we're looking at the cross section of that sheet. Therefore, we should be able to see that graphite laminate layer. And sure enough, there it is, I think. You're gonna need a camera with a really good zoom function or some really keen eyes, but if you do look closely, you can see that black layer without ripping the card. Actually, without causing any damage to the card at all. One more method to authenticate is called the light test. Grab your phone, turn on the light, and hold it behind your card. No light should pass through. If it's fake, the light will pass through. Why? Well, we can actually credit this to that graphite laminate layer once again. It stops most light from passing through, so it's actually a great way to authenticate Pokemon cards. If you're still suspicious about your card being fake, look for really obvious errors, such as incorrect spelling, bad grammar, incorrect energy cost or HP values. Check the font, and even the hollow pattern or the foil pattern in some cases. Sometimes what I like to do is look up some eBay sold listings, or maybe jump on TCG Player and search up your card. Hold it up next to one of the listings and just compare. It's that easy. Does the card look the same? Can you find small details that don't quite add up? So we have three tests to authenticate. We have the black laminate layer, if you look closely to the side. We have the light test, and we can also compare it online to other listings. If your card passes all three of these tests, then I'd say yes, it's authentic. If it fails any of them, then I would be suspicious your card might be fake. So the rip test works with Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, Flesh and Blood, and Lorcana. However, it does not work for Yu-Gi-Oh! Or One Piece, or Dragon Ball, or Digimon, or Universus. Alright, so key takeaways here. Avoid 3 ring binders if you can. They don't cause any damage to your cards, but they put your cards at risk to be damaged. Wash your hands. Gloves don't provide any extra protection as long as you wash your hands before handling cards. Now there are exceptions if you have sweaty hands, a skin condition, or something like long nails. Buy both top loaders and card savers. They're both great for different applications. Acid and PVC free is nice, but not necessary. It takes a long time, like over 10 years, for PVC to break down. So if you're in a pinch, PVC card supplies are perfectly fine. If you're going to put your cards in a storage locker or closet and forget about them, then PVC free is going to be extremely important. You can't fix whitening, in most cases. Sometimes you can gently fold back a small tear, but usually it's a lost cause. Buy sleeves. And finally, the rip test works, but you shouldn't rip your cards for obvious reasons. Use other methods instead. The best test to avoid purchasing fake cards is if they're unbelievably cheap. Don't buy them. And if you're still watching, holy crap, thank you so much for your dedication. If you want to support me, consider becoming a channel member. There's a button down there. It's just a couple bucks a month. I'm not a rich YouTuber or anything. Your contribution literally goes to paying my bills and supporting my family. So thank you.